All right, it's 1:30. We've got a quorum. Let me call the meeting to order. And we've got 2 sets of minutes. Everybody look at those, and we should receive separately. Or can we do them both together? Okay, we're going to do separate. Everybody look at the minutes, and do we have a motion for July 18th?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to receive the minutes for July 18th, 2024.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. They are received. Do we have a motion for August 1?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to receive the minutes for August 1st, 2024.
Second. Okay, got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. All right, they are received. On the continuance request withdrawals, the first thing I'd like to do is move item 5, A1 and A2 to near the bottom above adjournment after other business so that we can get the rest of the docket cleared out. Is that all right?
That is fine.
Okay, I
Do we
think
need a motion on that?
I think we do, to just rotate it to after other business.
And which ones?
It is additional items 5, A1, A2, the discussion on the ordinances. I'd like to just move that to the end.
I'd like to make a motion to move additional items 5, A1 and A2, is that right? To the end of the docket.
Second.
Motion and a second to move that on the docket. All right, we'll take those up later. Sarah, you want to do continuance request withdrawals?
We have one new request for continuance. It's item B11, case number 15688, request to defer to September 5th.
Anybody here on that one? Okay, I think we're ready for a motion then.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to move the continuance as read.
Motion and a second. Cast your votes. Okay, that one's deferred. Any requests from the public to defer an item? I don't have a consent docket, so sir, would you call the first one, please?
Item 1 is case number 15726, a request of Johnson & Associates on behalf of Sooner Classen LLC for a variance to the side yard setback in the C4 district, a variance to the special setback regulations of SBL 5, and a variance to the CBO Classen Boulevard overlay facade regulation at 721 North Classen Boulevard.
Hello, Jessica Bloy with Johnson & Associates representing the applicant, 1 East Sheridan Avenue. The property before you today is quite unique. I'm going to give you a bit of background on this property. So we actually have 2 different zoning districts on this site. The west side is zoned I2 and the east side is C4. On top of that, we also have the Classen Boulevard overlay and a special setback line along Classen Boulevard, which is center line. So what we are proposing today is a multi-story, fully enclosed self-storage development. We do believe this is an appropriate land use given the surrounding industrial and commercial developments. And we had a few discrepancies that unfortunately were not caught until the building permit stage, which is why we are before you today. So we have a request for a variance to the special building line specifically for the signage, which the monument sign is within that building line. And then a side yard setback on the north side, specifically within the C4 district, in addition to facade requirements within the Classen Boulevard overlay. So I would like to start with, we went back and looked at this development after these nonconformities were brought to our attention. And we have actually moved the proposed signage 5 feet to the west, which takes it out of the special building line. So I am asking you today that the variance request for the special building line be struck from the application. So that just leaves us with 2 variances. I'll start with the side yard setback on the north side. So within the C4 zoning district, the side yard setback is none, and then you have certain exceptions for residential districts and exterior lot lines abutting on our arterial street, which does not apply to this variance. But we also have an other, which is 15 feet. So due to some conflicting information and the code being very unclear, what we were interpreting a 0-foot setback, the building permit reviewer has determined that the 15-foot side yard setback will be applicable to this development. I have it shown on the exhibit that is right here before you. So again, we are requesting this variance for the side yard setback only within the C4 zoning portion, which is the east side of the development. So I would like to point out that this setback that we are asking for, which is 0 feet, is in line with the building to the north, which is also zoned as C4 and is built up to the property line. As you can see from the exhibit, this will create a very clear streetscape, and in addition, Northwest 7th Street has a very large right-of-way of 80 feet. So while we believe this 0-foot setback is appropriate for this site, it is also important to note that with the addition of the on-street parking and the sidewalk, the building will not be built right up to the street because of this very large right-of-way. And then 7th Street also dead ends at Western on the west side of the property. And to move on to the Classen Boulevard overlay, a small portion of the east side of the property is within the overlay, and the overlay prohibits metal facades. So we do believe that the intent of this requirement in the code was to prohibit very low quality and flimsy metal buildings, which this is not what this project is proposing. We are proposing a very high quality architectural metal facade. On this board right here, as you can see, it will be a mix of architectural metal and brick masonry. So this was done in an effort to break up this very large facade for this multi-story building. So this will create a very attractive development which is in line with the surrounding industrial and commercial developments. And just to reiterate, this is architectural metal panels. They will not be this very low quality. This will be very aesthetically pleasing in the combination with the brick masonry facade. And so to reiterate, I would like to strike the variance for the setback, the special building line on Classen for the signage, as that has been shifted to be out of the special building line. We request a 0-foot setback along the north boundary within the C4 zoning district, and to permit the architectural metal panels, which are proposed on the facade, specifically within the Classen Boulevard overlay, which is the east elevation of the proposed building along Classen Boulevard. And I am happy to answer any questions.
Anything from the board?
I don't, very well explained.
Yeah.
Do we need to vote them separately, the variances, or just the case?
Are you going to do anything different? Is it going to be one motion?
The
or
only
are you gonna-
difference to the case would be to strike the,
So
one
you can
variance.
do that one first, striking it, and then take your motion on the remaining items.
do I need to make a motion to strike?
Well, she's asked for it to be stricken, so
Okay.
we can note that it's been withdrawn, the portion that she asked to be stricken, and then your motion can be on the remaining items, if it is one motion.
Is there anybody wants to address the board on this application? I don't have anybody signed up.
Okay, with that, then I'd like to make a motion to strike the variance to Article 7, Section 12100.4.A.5.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. All right. And again,
And with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve case number 15276 on the basis that it meets the statutory requirement for a variance. 726, sorry, 15726.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Okay.
Ready?
Okay, item number 2 is case number 15716, an application for special exception of Merrick and Anna DeBoss to allow lodging accommodations, home sharing at 2540 Northwest 16th Street.
Yes, this is a large house, about 2,500 square feet, which used to
Would
be
you-
a duplex.
Excuse me?
Your
Give us your
name
name and
and
My name-
address.
I'm sorry, my name is Mark Dobos. I'm the owner of that house, and we are trying to get Board of Adjustment special exceptions to be able to do sharing, house sharing over there for less than 30 days.
Okay, anything from the board?
Anyone signed up to speak on this?
Not on this one, no.
Just a couple of questions. Is it a single-family home or a duplex?
It used to be duplex, but when I bought it, it was converted to the single family.
Okay, and so it's a 6-bedroom home? 6 bedrooms?
Pretty much. It's five bedroom plus one kitchen and up with a bedroom, but it's, you know, I'm just make the bigger bathrooms out of it. So.
Okay. And to get to the 14 guests that you were
Well,
requesting?
it could be, but it just usually never happen. You know, it's usually like 6 or 8 people. You know, but that's what I put there.
With there's 6 bedrooms in there and they all could sleep 2 people?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we got two.
How many bathrooms are in the home?
It's free full bathrooms. One bathroom is pretty large with which is like probably 200 square feet, just one bathroom. And then two smaller one with a shower and a bathtub.
Okay.
Anything else from the board?
I'd like to just make a couple adjustments to the application, and that would be to have a maximum of 11 guests.
That's fine.
Be all right with that?
Yes.
I'd like to add quiet hours to the application from 9 p.m. to 8 a.m.
Mhm.
I want to put a maximum number of vehicles, and I know you can put a lot of vehicles in this driveway, because front and the back, but I still want a maximum of 6,
That's fine.
and for a 1-year exemption.
Okay. Anybody want to address the board on this application? Nobody signed up, so I think we're ready.
Okay, with that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve case number 15716 on the basis that it meets the statutory requirement for a special exception, subject to the self-imposed rules with the modifications of a maximum number of guests to be 11, quiet hours from 9 p.m. to 8 a.m., a maximum number of vehicles of 6, and a 1-year exception.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. And you're approved.
I have one more. My name is Mark Dovas.
Okay, item number 3 is case number 15717, an application for special exception of American Anna DeBost to allow lodging accommodations home sharing at 1621 Northeast 39th Street.
Any questions or comments from the board?
This is a condominium,
This is what? No, this is the house.
Single-family home?
This is a single-family house which I purchased and restored. It's very nice looking now, and it's 3-bedroom, 1 bathroom. It's currently rented with furniture furnished to one person for the last 9 months, but I would like to have board permission for if anything change, and then we'll have like downside to be able to do the home sharing for the shorter period of time.
Okay, sorry, I was looking at the next case on the condominium, but you'd mentioned in the application that there was parking in the back?
No,
Okay.
this is not. This is just parking in the front.
Yeah, I think that was just
It
carried over from the
doesn't
last
have
one.
the parking in the back. I mean, it can be done, but it doesn't.
So it's a 4-bedroom home,
3-bedroom,
3-bedroom,
3-bedroom, 1 bathroom home.
3-bed, 1 bath?
Uh-huh.
How do you get to 9 guests in this?
Oh, just we can reduce it, you
Okay.
know. I mean, there is a sofa sleeper in the living room, but you know,
Okay,
right now it's one person living there, a doctor. So, just 6 or
would you be okay with 6?
yes,
Maximum of 6
I'll be
guests?
fine.
Okay, and add quiet hours to it,
Of course,
9 p.m. to 8 a.m.
yes.
Number of vehicles, can you park in the garage?
Yes, you can park in the garage. I think 3 vehicles would be maximum. I mean, it can be it's a dead-end street, but with 3 vehicles would be perfect condition.
Okay. And a 1-year exemption?
But that's fine. We'll have to come back.
Anything else? Did anyone sign up to
Got some
speak?
pro-
Someone did?
Yeah,
Okay.
got some protesters. Anything else from the board? Okay, let me call on Fanny Brown. Come on now.
Come on up, yep. Let her speak. She'll go to that one.
I'm Fanny. She's Fanny. I'm going to introduce myself also.
Okay.
Good.
Give us your name and address.
My name
and-
is Fanny Brown. I live at 1528 Northeast 39th Street.
Okay,
My name is Shirley Carey. I live at 1513 Northeast 39th Street.
okay, I've got your sheet. We're going to do them one at a time.
One at a time.
Fanny, you're on.
Okay. I'm not understanding what we're trying to do as far as moving people in and that many people in a house. I've been at this residence almost 60 years. And we already have a lot of traffic going back and forth on that street. So I'm really needing him to explain what he's trying to do with even 9 people or 6 people in one resident with 3 bedrooms. And the bedrooms are very small.
What I heard was, there's actually one person living in it right now on a long-term lease, and then he was just here to get a license for a special exception for a short-term lease for 30 days. And, you know, we were negotiating it down from 9 people that he had written in the application to 6, because I just asked if 2 people could be in each bedroom.
So does that mean people will be going in and out?
It could.
Could mean that? And-
Yeah, so I wouldn't allow any on-street parking. They'd only have to park in the driveway, and then limit it to 6. And if we need to do more, we can do more.
Okay. I think I understand. Okay.
Okay. All right. Shirley, your turn.
My name is Shirley Carey. I know you noticed that all these people are here. They're from 39th Street because they don't get the grasp what's going on. Why would we let that many people move into a single-family home and that many people, 3 to 6 to a room, all the cars, all the traffic in and out? The people on that street are 90, 80 and up. All that riffraff is not acceptable. We don't want it. We already gave property to the state behind the houses on the north side, 3 feet before the 4-lane street that's going through there, through the creek, that they didn't even know anything about. 1 or 2 people back there got a letter. They called another person, who called my dad, who called another person to say what's going on. That's why we're all here, because we don't want it. It's too much. Well, our street is calmed down. I've been there 60 years. My dad is 91, and my mother is deceased. All that, we don't need all that. We already agreed to let the VA move across the street from where my parents live. And those are women that didn't have a home. And it's supposed to be like 6 people. When they got through, it's 4 bedrooms, 4 baths, then a room for the person that stayed to look over the people who have craziness all the time. And we're gonna allow something else to go down the street? We don't want it. We don't. Am I speaking for everybody on 39th Street? Raise your hand. I don't know anything. Yeah. See, they didn't get the letter. One person got the letter, that went across the street, said, did you get a letter? No. Did you get a letter?
So notice on this, I believe, is 300 feet from the residence, the radius, and the first 10 people. Well, everyone within 300 feet, and then a maximum of 10 people, or minimum.
Yeah.
So that's the way, so that's how the notice was served.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I understand. So we all were gonna get a letter.
So a 300-foot radius around the property.
Okay.
And staff we can show you the list. We're
Yeah.
happy to do that. Can I just explain what the application's for a little bit more? Would that- Okay. So what the applicants here are asking for today is called a special exception. It's to do what we call home sharing, but it's like Airbnb, Vrbo, that kind of operation. And because he doesn't live there, he has to come to this board to seek permission in order to do the home sharing, is what we call it, short-term rental. So what they're talking about with the people is how many people could come and stay there, like through Airbnb or Vrbo.
I also own property on the opposite side of Prospect, rental property. So I know about that. I don't want that many people in my.
Okay,
thing.
I
It's
just wanted to
only one
clarify for
bedroom.
anyone who, because the notice might not, home sharing is kind of an Oklahoma City term, so I just want to make sure people understood that's what it was for.
So she's sharing.
One at a time.
Yeah.
I'll get you in a minute. Go ahead. Shirley?
Okay, the question was, are they from prison? Where are they from?
Okay, wait, address your questions
Yeah,
to the board.
Okay.
Right. And so we don't know where the people are from, right? They're signing up for a short-term lease. He was asking for 9 people in the original application, and I pared it down to 6 right now, and I think he's probably willing to even go lower, just to try to make it more harmonious with the neighborhood. And that's why I want to keep the traffic, the number of cars down, I want to keep the number of people down. And again, we're going to give this for 1 year to even try it out.
Okay. She said okay, but I'm not okay. But she's
Okay.
okay. I'm
Okay.
not. Okay.
Okay,
Wait,
wait a minute.
come on.
I got a Billy Curry.
Hey, I'm Ida Smith. We're at 1509
Okay,
Northeast
wait,
39th.
wait. Billy Curry, I'll call
Oh,
you.
I'm sorry. I
I'll-
thought you called me.
I'm just taking them in order on my file.
To begin with, on this.
Oh, give me your name and address.
Oh, I am Billy Curry, and my address is 3916 North Ricky Drive,
Okay.
about 2 houses down where this is supposed to take place at. To begin with, that is only one way in and one way out on that street. You have to go down 39th Street, you turn on Ricky Drive, and then you go into Sherry Lane, you're right back to 39th Street again. Let's see. First of all, the parking is going to be messy. You know, when we get ready to go through there now, it's terrible now. You have to back up sometimes, let other cars come through there. And these people are not going to be walking, they're going to be driving cars. So that's going to add to the traffic. In addition, there's kids with basketball goals. Since that they can't go to Polk School, that's closed, they're using the street as a recreation area. So we don't need any more people there at all. And that house, you know, is just for one bedroom. Okay, let's see. Okay, I've been there for 60 years. When I moved on that street, it was a single dwelling. And so I don't see why we should have to give in to somebody to want to make a profit off that area just because they want to make more money. That's our house that we worked hard to pay for and to hold on to. And somebody's going to come in and cause all that inconvenience just because they want to make more money. Now, is that fair to us? That's again, it's mainly a street of older people. Most people on there, you go on the street and you wave at everybody, you've known them for years. I was talking to a girl last night, and she said that her sister has a mental problem, and that sometimes, you know, neighbors have to bring her back home and all like that, you know. We know each other. We talked and like that, and we don't need strangers to look up every 30 days, a different set of people in and out of that house. You get to know your neighbors, you understand them, and you trust them. But you got a continuation of people just in and out. It's not fair to us. When we moved in that neighborhood, we didn't bargain for that. And I don't think one person for profit ought to be to come in there and just change things. Let's see what, as I said before, between the hours of 4 p.m. and about 9 o'clock in the morning, there's cars wall to wall on both sides. If you meet somebody, you got to turn up somebody's driveway or you have to back out. And you know these people are going to be driving cars. That's going to just add to the traffic. I'm sure there's plenty of other places in Oklahoma City where they can establish whatever they want to do. But we don't need that. I'm too old. I'm 83 years old. And I don't need to start over, and we don't need that bother. So I think that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Questions?
I do want to express that I limited it to 3 cars already and no on-street parking, so there won't be any additional cars parked on the street. And
It's already a problem,
right, and I don't want to add to the problem.
and you'll be added to it.
Well, that's why I said I won't allow any on-street parking. And if there is on-street parking,
There wouldn't be, because there's this little nook right in there. I don't think one car, I've never seen one car parked there. Because that area is kind of curved like, and that little area is kind of curved almost like that deal right there is, and you never see a car parked there. And it's just too close to me to have strangers just in and out. When we moved there, it was single dwelling, and I think that it should stay there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I got a Julie Jones? Got it.
My name is Julie Jones, and I stay at 3920 North Ricky Drive.
Okay,
And what I was concerned about was the parking too, and different people coming into our neighborhoods that we don't know.
Okay.
That's what I was concerned about.
parking.
That's it.
Anything? Okay. And then I've got a Jimmy McEwen.
I'm Jimmy McEwen, and I live at 1609 Northeast 38th Street. I've been there over 60 years, raised a family there. I'm home alone now, but I enjoy that, and I'm not looking forward to having strangers come in my home. And I'll be redundant. My neighbor said, it's a cul-de-sac, one way in and one way out. Parking is limited. The streets are narrow. When you have family, you just have to forget that. So I'm in opposition to it. I'm in opposition to it. Thank you.
Okay. I didn't see you signed up, but you want to speak?
No, I didn't
Go
get a
ahead.
chance to. I'm Ida Smith, and I'm at 1509 Northeast 39th. Trying to get an understanding of the type of situation you're presenting to us. Is it going to be like a halfway house, or can he put any type of people in there? What kind of vetting are you going to do when you bring these people into our neighborhood? Home sharing, what does that mean? Does that mean that he can, at 30 days, can he bring in someone that has been incarcerated and it's just a stop-off point for him? What?
He can, so he used probably VRBO or Airbnb, and it would be for a short-term rental, less than 30 days, and they're vetted through those individual companies. And I'm not even sure which companies he was using, but they're renters.
So you're saying no, that there won't be any used as like a halfway house or
Well,
a
it'd be-
stop-off point?
If they're renters, they could be anyone.
Okay, well, then we definitely have an issue. We have children in the neighborhood, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, old, elderly people, myself, and it's not conducive.
Any questions or comments from the board? Okay, go ahead, give us your name and address.
Yes, I'm raising my 3 young,
give us
impressionable
your name and address.
grandchildren. My name is Maddie Sotelo, 1509 Northeast 39th Street. And these are young children that are very impressionable, and they know their neighbors. We know our neighbors. I grew up there in the same school that they're going to now. I mean, we have older people in the neighborhood. We all own our homes. We don't need this. We don't want this. And it's not right to just impose things upon us like this. I'm opposed. Thank you.
Okay, Merrick, you want to respond?
Yes, everybody.
You have to tell us.
Press the board.
Everyone from the neighbors who wants my phone number, and if there are any trouble, you can call me 24/7. This house has been in terrible shape. We found a pickup truck which was buried there for 30 years, over there in the backyard. So we restore it. I believe that it's just going to help the neighborhood instead of having a problem. The people which are coming for the shorter period of time, some of them come for work, some of them come to stay. There's no halfway house or prisoners which are going to be there. There is plenty of parking space, and usually what we can count of is maybe 1 car or 2. It might be family with the children coming and visiting the Oklahoma City area, and they're going to have 1 car, and there's a garage which they can park. And I think most of the problems, if there are any, can be addressed by me. I can give everybody from the neighbors my phone number, and if they have any concerns, they can call me. So far, we have one tenant there which stays for a while. We don't have any problem with her. She's not bringing anybody there and then, creating any problems. So I think we can rest assured that it's gonna be the same kind of neighborhood like it was or better.
Anything else from the board?
I'd like to readdress some of the items in the application and after hearing from the neighbors and seeing if you'd be willing to reduce the number of guests from 6 to 5.
That's fine.
What do you think?
Yeah,
And from 3 cars to 2 and no on-street parking.
that's of course.
Quiet hours from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. to 8 a.m.
Okay.
And a 1-year exception.
Okay.
And the reason why we give a 1-year exception, or that I would suggest it is a trial basis to make sure that it's operated and the neighbors are okay with it.
Okay.
And so it sounds like you have a lot of people watching. So I
Sounds
assume
good
you're
to
going to run a good operation here.
Okay. Oh, you got to come, no, come up to the microphone, please. We need to get it on the record.
Is there any way to put a stipulation on the type of guest, the type of situation as far as, he's saying that there's not going to be, so can we not put that in writing?
We can't vet that,
Yeah, I don't-
and there's no way to enforce it. But again, as owners of the property surrounding this, you
So
can.
as a neighbor, if I find that he has boarding in his facility, halfway house or whatever.
I don't think you can
cannot
discriminate against the renter. And so what you can do is you can police whether he keeps the cars in the driveway, whether there's less than 5 or less people in the home at any one time, and he abides by the quiet hours. And if he doesn't, you can call the Action Center and they'll start a code enforcement, and that's how we find out the.
You all could also keep a log, decide which one person is going to keep a log of everything that you see, and then have that one person, when you think you have enough, turn that into the Action Center. And if it doesn't rise to that level, then just bring it, if there's an application,
Yep.
to
So-
do it again.
Yeah.
So how many people have to object to this for it not to be passed?
It's not a number.
No.
It's not numerosity.
Right. And so it hasn't been operated as a short term, so we don't have a history.
Right.
Right
So that's
now.
what you're creating by the log. So it would need to be dated, and you would have to explain exactly what you saw happen that you had a problem with. And then whoever saw that would need to put their name on it. And then if there was an application for renewal, you'd bring your log and those people who said they saw these things happen on that day. And this board could look at that and decide whether or not a renewal would be appropriate.
So pictures and the data and the dates.
Okay.
I-
I got 2 more. Go ahead, quick. Yeah, come on up, please.
You can,
Yeah.
Thank you.
either one.
I just want to make one comment that he said that we could have his phone number
Right.
and give him a call, but you know that's not going to happen.
Oh,
If a problem
it'll happen.
arises-
This isn't his only operation that he's doing in the city of
Right,
Oklahoma City.
but-
He runs a good operation, and so you guys all get his contact, and he will respond. And if he doesn't, that's an offense.
I understand
a
that,
code
but you
offense.
know, being seniors, if a problem arises, they're going to call the police.
That would be,
Going to go 911.
yeah, that's
And
fine
we're
too.
just- And we have a very good police department and fire department right around the
Right.
corner, so you
Yep.
know that's
Yeah.
what's going to happen rather than them calling.
Right. And I believe he's heard you loud and clear, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I got one more hand in the back. Come on up.
I think more consideration should be taken to the fact that we bought that house as a single dwelling. And I don't think a person can just come in and say, okay, I'm going to make a big profit, so I'm going to disturb the whole neighborhood like that. And like I said, like with today, in a year, we'll come back here and we'll say, oh, he did great. Because, you depend on us to keep a log of what he has to do. You know that's not going to work. And every one of you know it's not going to work. Because I think we'll consider, we bought that house in good faith. It was a single-family dwelling. And I don't think that a person, just for pure profit, he can go anywhere in Oklahoma City and do that. Behind that house, there's a wooded area, there's a creek, there's a stream. Any kind of convict can go in, and all they got to do is just run through the woods, and they got a free escape. You're asking us to consider anybody can come in and out of that house. We lived in a neighborhood where we feel comfortable and safe, and all of a sudden now we got to depend on him for our neighborhood to be safe, who they bring in there. And once they start bringing people in there, anybody they want is going to come in there, and there's not going to be anything done about it. In the next 2 years, 3960 North Rickey, well, that's a terrible place now. People are shooting, there's killing, and it's going to be a problem with the traffic. He's talking about, and they're going to share a car, it's going to leave a car here. He don't know that. All we got to do go on is what? You can just imagine people are mobile, they have their own car, then they drive their cars. That it's just a single car driveway, it's not even a double driveway. And I've never seen anybody park out in front of that place because this curve just about like that deal right there. I think it's just so unfair to us. We bought that house 60 years ago. We bought all of us older people, depending on it to stay that way. We didn't find somebody all of a sudden he can see a way and make a whole lot of money and move in there and just destroy the whole neighborhood. Thank you.
Anything else from the board? Okay, come on up.
My name is Caroline Curry, and that's my mother. I grew up in that house, and I live in Moore. And I would feel a lot comfortable if we can have people who we don't know. They're in and out every 30 days, different people. They don't care about the neighborhood. They don't care about the people. And I would feel better knowing my mother was safe with the people that she was growing up with or been there for years. And people in and out, I don't trust it. You don't know what they can do. We got at least, 60 widows, older women, single, living by themselves. And I don't trust people coming in every 30 days and doing whatever they want to do and then leave. I'm totally against it, and I don't want this to happen. That's all I have to say.
Okay. We ready for a motion? Anything else from the board? Okay.
Anything, Marcus?
Yeah, but before we make a motion, I just want to address some of the concerns. It is a lot of the things that you guys raised, and we've become notorious for stating this, but a lot of these concerns are outside of the purview of this body. So when it comes to the actual operation of running a short-term rental, and as Sarah accurately stated earlier, that's our term as a city to talk about any rental that would take place under 30-day timeline. So whether somebody's coming into town for a vacation or someone's coming into town to work, we require a process where they have to come here and get a license. What we're here to do is we're here to make sure that we're not issuing a license to someone who's going to be a bad operator or a bad neighbor. And so I completely understand your sentiments as far as not knowing if somebody is going to be, but unfortunately we have to operate from a system of innocent until proven guilty, for lack of a better term. If somebody has not operated previously, we can't make a decision under the assumption that they're going to be a bad operator. However, if they operate in a way that's not consistent with what we expect, then unfortunately the only other option you have is to report that to the Action Center. That information gets logged, it comes back here to us, and then we can take the appropriate action to determine whether or not a license should be revoked. Other than that, we don't have the ability to determine whether or not Airbnbs are good for the city or whether or not Airbnbs should be allowed in the city. That is a question that you would have to take to your local city council, your city council person in your ward. currently, and for a little while longer, that's Nikki Nice. She's going to be the appropriate person to take your complaint to and say, I don't want to see this type of thing happening in the city. She has the purview and the authority to do something about it. City Council has the purview and the authority to do something about it. We don't. So it's not that we don't hear you, it's just that what we can review is much smaller than what I believe you guys think we have control over. So I just want to be clear about that. It's not that we're ignoring you and saying we're going to do it regardless. It is that we have a small and defined set of parameters that we can review these based on.
Well said, Marcus.
Okay, wait a minute. Do you have something new or different that you? Oh, no, you got to come to the microphone, please.
I just have a question. So he's asking for an exception, so can y'all deny the exception? Can y'all say no?
Yes, we can deny this special exception, but there has to be some kind of grounds for us to deny it on. And unfortunately, it's not sufficient grounds to say he may be a bad operator. Now, if you all came here today and you said, hey, for the past 30 days or 60 days or whatever period of time, this individual has been operating this place without a license. There's trash throughout the neighborhood. It's causing a nuisance to us as neighbors. If you come here and you document that, then that is grounds for us to say, well, we don't believe that you're going to operate this in a manner that's consistent with the quiet enjoyment of the neighborhood. So we're going to decline this application. But without having that information, what you all are asking us to do is to deny him the ability to operate this as a short-term rental just based off of the chance that he's a bad operator. And that's something we can't do.
So this is supposed to be an Airbnb? I don't know about you, but when I rent an Airbnb, it's in a nice neighborhood, luxurious, it's a nice place to be. These are just regular old houses, building 60s? They're not nice homes, and they're just, mediocre homes. Airbnb is usually you spend a lot of money on a nice Airbnb. This is not really what you would call an Airbnb, I wouldn't think.
Well, so then the market will make it so that it wouldn't rent.
And people rent these for a number of reasons, not just for
Work out
vacation
of
purposes.
right. And so there's an ordinance that was written for the city of Oklahoma City that allows this to happen, and that's the purview that we are working under today.
So once y'all approve this, which it seems like y'all want to approve it, we'll have to go to Nikki Nice and the ward council member to change things. That what we have to do next? I just want to know, what do we do next? Because it seems like y'all already going to say yes, but we don't want it, so we got to go to the next person. Where do we go next?
So you would need to go to City Council, and City Council has been taking up this issue. You're not the only ones in the city that have taken exception to short-term rentals. Other residents have. And so you can add your voice to theirs and express your dissent about the fact that we even have a policy. And they can make change at that level of government to say, we're not going to allow these anymore. I'm not saying they will. I'm not intending to speak for City Council. I'm just stating that they have the authority to do something that we don't have the authority or the ability to do as this body.
What is the timeline? Can we do it is he going to do this like today, tomorrow, next month?
Well,
what's our timeline to talk to someone to kind of stop this?
If and when he gets approved today, he would then get a license or get granted the special exception. He would have to get a license, and then it's 10 days?
For this process, if approved today, there is a 10-day appeal period. Any appeals to this decision would have to be appealed to the district court. However, once the special exception's in effect, he would need to get a license, which is a license to operate. So he has to have both the special exception and advertise and operate in the manner that the board has stated, and then also has to maintain an annual license.
So we got time to talk to somebody else.
Right. And this property is currently leased long-term, so
right.
It's not like it's going to happen soon.
Yep, there's been someone long-term for a while, and
right.
She's quiet, she doesn't make any noise.
And she might stay there forever.
She's fine, but we had a problem with every 30 days, somebody different, in and out, in and out, in and out. We can't get to know them, we don't know their habits, it's just like, I don't trust it. But like I said, we'll take the next step. We'll do what's next. All right, thank you.
Okay, now I think we're ready for a motion.
Yeah. With that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve case number 15717 on the basis that it meets the statutory requirement for a special exception, subject to the self-imposed rules with the modifications to a maximum of 5 guests, quiet hours from 9 p.m. to 8 a.m., a maximum number of vehicles 2, no on-street parking, and for a term of 1 year.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. I vote yes. I don't have a voting panel. Approved.
Okay, item number 4 is case number 15718, an application for special exception of Caitlin Sonoto to allow lodging accommodations home sharing at 5807 Hefner Village Circle.
Hello, my name is Caitlin Sonato, 11405 Wallace Avenue. Would you like me to give it a minute? All right, and I am here to request a application for a special exception. It is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath townhome. Each bedroom can accommodate up to 2 guests, and then there is also a sleeper sofa in the living room, so a total capacity of 8 guests. There is capacity for 3 cars if 1 car is in the driveway, or sorry, 1 car in the garage, 2 in the driveway, and then there's additional street parking just down the road, about 250 feet near the clubhouse. And then the only amendment I would add to this that I do not have listed is quiet hours from 9 p.m. to 8 a.m.
The only one signed up on this one was Caitlin.
Okay. And this is a condominium in Hefner Village?
Yes.
Okay. And I do remember another case that they came in. There was protest to that, so it must be working out. Would you be willing to make the adjustment to 7 instead of 8 guests?
Yes.
It'd be 2 per bedroom plus 1 extra.
On the sleeper. Yep.
And then a maximum number of vehicles, 3.
Okay.
Quiet hours as stated, 9 to 8, and a 1-year term.
All right.
Does anybody want to address the board on this one? I don't have anybody signed up. Okay, I think we're ready for a motion then, if there's nothing else from the board.
Did my brokerage sell you this house?
Who?
Did my real estate brokerage sell you this house?
No.
Okay, I just wanted to verify.
Mr. Chair, with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve case number 15718 on the basis that it meets the statutory requirement for a special exception with the self-imposed rules with the modifications to a maximum number of guests to 7, quiet hours from 9 p.m. to 8 a.m., a maximum number of vehicles to 3, a 1-year term.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, so cast your votes. You're approved.
Thank you all very much.
Case number 5 is case number 15710, a renewal application for special exception of Jeffrey Cobbs on behalf of JHKRJ Trust to allow lodging accommodations home sharing at 11312 Greystone Avenue.
Hello, I'm Jeff Cobbs, here to request a renewal of this special exception.
Mr. Chair, did anyone sign up to speak on this?
Not on this one, no. Does anybody want to address the board on this application? Okay, go ahead.
It's a 4-bedroom home? Yes, it's 4 bedrooms, and then there's a game room in the back that has AC. It's a separate building.
Separate building?
Yeah, it's like a shed in the back. There's a pull-out couch. I'm not including that in the number of guests. So there's a king bed, 2 queen beds, and then the 4th bedroom has a twin over full bunk bed.
How many cars can fit in the driveway?
2 can fit in the garage, and I think 3 can fit in the driveway. I think we had 4 last time. 3 would be a tight fit, so 2 in the driveway and 2 in the garage.
I'm gonna put 5 maximum. And no on-street parking.
What'd you say?
I said I'm gonna put a maximum number of 5 vehicles.
Okay.
With no on-street
Okay,
parking.
yep, that makes sense.
And change the quiet hours from 9 p.m. to 8 a.m., just an hour earlier.
Okay, gotcha.
And this is the first renewal on this property?
Yes, yeah, I got the renewal last year, and then I started operating in November.
Okay. Would you be willing to put a 3-year exception?
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Anything else?
No. We're ready for a motion then.
With that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve case number 15710 on the basis that it meets the statutory requirement for a special exception, subject to the rules and the addition of quiet hours from 9 p.m. to 8 a.m., a maximum number of vehicles, 5 for 3-year term.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. You're approved.
Thank you.
Item number 6 is case number 15708, a renewal application for special exception of Jeff Cooper of Just Like Home Rentals LLC to allow lodging accommodations at 2900 Wilton Lane.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Cooper, and I'm here for renewal of the special exception license at 2900 Wilton Lane, per everything that's been submitted and from the previous year.
Mr. Chair, I know this is a continuation from the last meeting, but if there's people that signed up, I think we should hear from
We've
them.
got several.
And I will say that I wasn't at that meeting, but I did watch it, so I'm up to speed on the case.
Okay. Robert, you want to go first? You're on top of the list.
Honorable Board, I will be fairly brief. I think a little bit of history is required in that Mr. Cooper has operated Just Like Home LLC and assigned 2900 Wilton to his LLC in 2020, I believe. There's a deed on file with that date. He then started operating short-term rentals without a license, and finally, I believe, sometime in 2022, 23, he was called on it and went through the process to get his short-term rental exception and license. At that time, over 100 individually signed objections were obtained from the neighborhood members who voiced their opposition. Ultimately, the board decided that the critical, important objections would be those within 300 feet. Now then, of those members within 300 feet, approximately 9 or 10 have voiced an objection and have authorized me to present their objection here. Now then, the question is has Mr. Cooper been a good operator of this home for the last year that he has basically been on probation, because the board only gave him a 1-year exception and a 1-year license? Well, he allowed his license to expire May 4th of 2024, knowing full well that he was being watched by over 100 different set of eyes as to what he was doing with his property. Then he continued to operate it to the present and advertising it as a short-term rental and without a license, and has claimed an application of renewal and argued that the renewal process and the moratorium issued by the City of Oklahoma City did not apply to him because he had a previous license, and that he should be allowed a grace period of over 6 weeks, which it took him between May 4th and June, I believe the 16th or thereabouts, to get his application in. And so, but there is no city ordinance that allows a grace period, and thus there is no law that extends to him a grace period for his license, either as a renewal or this sort of period. So we would submit to the board that this is a new application. Now then, he will most probably argue that the moratorium does not apply to him for other reasons. I'll let him make whatever arguments he's going to make. But if the board wants to know, is Mr. Cooper the kind of person who controls his tenants? And the answer is no, because as early as May of 2023, within weeks of being admonished by the board that he would be closely monitored by the family members in his neighborhood as to his activities, he allowed people to park on the streets. Photos were submitted. Now, I don't believe he has the ability to monitor all of his properties. He's just one man. He has multiple properties, at least 5 that I'm aware of, under the Just Like Home banner that he advertises. He does not really read the ordinances that apply to him, and he is required by Oklahoma City ordinance to post prominently or just post the license number under which he's operating, which he's failed to do, and he continues to advertise without posting that number, and so doesn't feel like the city has any sort of, he doesn't need to obey all the laws of the city in reference to him. Now then, the question in my mind, does the expiration of his license allow for a grace period for this process which he filed to be a renewal, or is it a new application? And I believe that when you use the term renewal, it means a new application. When you use the term extension, then you're talking about the same conditions, it's just an extension of time. And the city council used the term renewal. Now then, does the use of the term renewal mean a new application? Certainly, in this particular case, it does, because he allowed his time to expire, and there is no city ordinance allowing for a grace period for him to file a renewal under the terms, under the application process as managed by the clerk for the Board of Adjustment. And there are other folks who'd like to talk about their issues. Thank you.
Questions for Robert?
Yeah, Mr. Robles, before you leave, the moratorium is, my understanding of it is that it only encompasses, or only comes into effect if there's more than 10% density of short-term leases on any one block. So whether this was a new application or a renewal application, it would move forward. Am I correct?
That is one of the conditions of the moratorium, but my interpretation of the timing is that this applicant applied for his renewal or the new special exception on June 17th.
Pre-moratorium.
And the ordinance became effective July 17th. So we did not interpret that the ordinance, or couldn't even have interpreted that the ordinance apply, or the moratorium applied to him.
So if I understand correctly, the moratorium does not apply to Mr. Cooper because he applied in June. Is that correct?
Right, our interpretation is that once the moratorium took effect, which was an immediate emergency ordinance, as of that time, staff started to have to calculate how many,
What the density of the
the
short-term
density
lease
to
was
see
on
the
any
10%.
one block.
And I'm not prepared to know how many are on this block today, but going forward, that's information that we're providing to the board, because it's 10%, it's at least one, and then it's up to 10% of the block would be allowed to apply for a special exception.
Any other questions of the board? Thank you.
All right. I'm having a hard time reading this. Larison?
Larison, yes.
Okay, I got it right.
Hi, I'm Kent Larison. I am an attorney. I live in Lakehurst. I've got permission from our residents within 300 feet to make a presentation for them a little bit here. The board last year, because I was here, asked Mr. Cooper to be a good neighbor. And a good neighbor generally is one who participates in activities involved in the neighborhood around them. Lakehurst maintains an easement along May Avenue, puts flowers in, takes care of the lawn, waters it and everything. Mr. Cooper's never offered to join the neighborhood association. We frequently see the grass tall and unkempt. We've submitted pictures of one of those times. Eventually, it occurs, but it occurs more often than it does for anybody else living on Wilton Drive or within 300 feet of this Airbnb. Also new since last year and affecting this exception is the same owner of property that was involved with the group that conveyed property to Mr. Cooper, conveyed the house behind him at 2901 Elmhurst. And that house is now a hospice home. It is not opened yet. It's been in the process for over a year. That landowner and project director called a meeting of the neighbors within the 300 feet of that residence, had 2 meetings with us, had been in contact with the neighborhood president about things going on with that property, has submitted $1,000 worth of contribution to the property, has been active in maintaining the easement next to his property that is part of our responsibility as well. And so we find these things as being good neighbors. Much like the group that was here earlier, the immediate residents within this 300 feet are generally very senior citizens. Ms. Legria across the street's in the hospital today. Ms. Mormon, who came to the earlier hearing, is having physical therapy. The same application is constant turnover makes people anxious. Ms. McDermott, who lives within the 300 feet, had a man walk up to her door at 3 a.m. in the morning, open the screen door, turn the handle, and try to enter. The next door neighbors had the same man walk through and open up their back gate and walk in. Now that man's not related to Mr. Cooper, but it is that it adds to the concern that there are temporary people in this location that the neighbors are unfamiliar with and do not know. Now, we have no problem with Mr. Cooper's long-term rental. That's his prerogative. Right now, he has a really nice family in there. They're doing a remodel, and so they're there for a long time. So we're not trying to deny him of his livelihood. We are simply saying that the exception to the Airbnb is detrimental to Wilton Drive. It's detrimental to Lakehurst. Last year after the meeting, the block director, Carolyn Strecker of Wilton Drive, and I met with city planning to talk about new proposals that are now coming before the city council. They may be the ones that are here today. I don't know. But it is that if you operated without a license before you even started, and then you've let your license lapse, you have not a plethora of, because I get tired of driving by there. I had to stop a month ago to tell a gentleman that was riding there that he couldn't park on the street. He didn't know that, so he very graciously got in his car and pulled it into the driveway. So the rules that you've set out aren't being conveyed or conveyed in a manner to which people understand them or can follow them. The trash cans sit out in front of the fence. Nobody else on Wilton Drive has trash cans sitting in front of their fence. It is those kind of things that make not a good neighbor within this concept of the exception. And that's the reason we ask that the exception be denied. Thank you.
Questions or comments from the board? Okay, that's all I've got signed up on this one. Anybody want to address the board? Okay. Questions, comments from the board?
Did you want to answer any of those questions?
So I guess from a context standpoint, so questions surrounding how we operate the homes, or questions surrounding
Just the
application and
the
stuff?
two that I had written down were the street parking and the trash cans.
Yes. Trash cans, the trash cans sit to the left of the garage if you're facing the street, to the left of the garage, right up against the fence. There's 3 trash cans there. That's how it's always been. Before we bought the home, that's where the trash cans sat. It's the same ones that were there before we purchased the home, and that's where they've been for the past 3 years.
Is there room behind the gate?
What's that?
Is there room behind the gate to put them there?
Yes, there'd be room behind the gate.
That would be a suggestion.
Okay.
And then the other is just, no on-street parking, to limit the on-street parking. Go ahead.
I was going to say whether it matters or not. So there's several parking spaces in the drive, and the time that they referenced in May, a few short months or a few short days afterwards, that was, I made reference to this last time, that was a missionary who was staying there, and they did end up having 2 people park on the street directly in front of the home. And there was still space in the drive, but sometimes people rather not block someone in, and literally parked on the street in front of the home. There's cars parked up and down all along the street, so they probably figured it was okay to be parked directly into the home. And then they were approached, and they were approached fairly aggressively, according to them, and told that they cannot park in front of the house that they were at. I went there to the home on Saturday, this past Saturday. The guests that are currently staying there had something happen with the garage door, and so I went Saturday evening to tend to that. And actually, a contractor from a garage door company also came, who parked on the street directly in front of the house, not impeding on anything at all. We were there both for 15 minutes, and so periodically, people do things like that. The lawn maintenance crew, they can't really fit.
That's understandable. I just want it in the application, and when you advertise it, that there'd be no on-street parking.
Gotcha. Okay, and I was just I didn't want
Yeah,
people,
the one-offs, I
people always
understand.
approaching,
Right.
the people who are there. I'm giving them a hard time, but yes.
What would you say the average number of guests?
It varies.
I'd like to bring the number of guests down. I really would, just to try to make this more harmonious with the neighbors.
Yes, sir. I do have one statement I did want to make, and so everyone has our numbers. There's not been anything bad that's happened. Like with what we do, it's worked out just fine, which is why after this time period, what they're bringing up is a latch on the gate, and so we're doing our best to be good neighbors, and I feel like we've executed it pretty well, which is why the only thing that they had to complain about was, we missed the license. And so, because we do have sometimes where there's people who come in town, having a surgical procedure and kidney transplant, and it's a 4-bedroom home. It's a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath, and the garage and the drive can fit like 8 vehicles, 7 very easily. And so we turn away more guests than what we accept throughout the entire time that we've been operating in an attempt to continue to be good neighbors.
Yep. And I understand that, but you have 100 people that signed a document saying that you're not. And so I'm just trying to get this to be more palatable.
Yes, sir. And the 100 people, it was all the same one document about seeing the trash cans.
And I
Yeah, it
take
was
that
the
into
trash
consideration.
cans. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Anything else?
I have one more thing to add, please.
Okay, come on back up.
We would ask the board to consider, I know that, I don't know, but you can inform me. My understanding of this processing is that the exception is granted for 1 year, and then at the renewal, there's the option of going 3 years or 5 years. We would ask the board to grant just another 12 months exception.
That's all I would do. That's all I would give, is 12
Okay.
months.
And we would also ask for the reduction in the number of people. It's, I think, 8.
It's at 8.
Yeah, it's 8, and so we would like it to go down to 6. The parking arrangement, at least on property, you know, is
I'd
okay.
still limit, I'd like to see that at 5.
Yeah, and we've had some concern that some of the 30-day rentals have been commercial entities. If I knew how to work my cell phone better, I could show you trailers parked in the driveway that are there, and those aren't supposed to be there. They're supposed to be a residential area, not a place for, but I understand what the deal is. But nevertheless, that's happening in a neighborhood that it's not supposed to happen in. So anyways, that's my proposal. Thank you.
Before you take your seat, sir, on the issues that you've had in this last year, was there anything outside of the trash can issue or the on-street parking? Do you take any objection to his?
Well, Action Line had the one on the unkempt lawn and bushes overgrown, so that's a third one that's been actually reported. I contacted Action Line about the trailer being parked in the driveway, but they couldn't find the number, and I couldn't find the number, and it may have been because I'm old and I just absent-minded at times that I might have just called to ask about an opinion about that. But nevertheless, when they finally left, as opposed to, which was several weeks later, as opposed to just exiting onto May Avenue from their location or one of the adjacent streets, the van and the trailer came by my house on Drakestone, slowed down in front of my house because I work in my living room and I see everything that goes by, slowed down and looked at my house because my car is recognizable as the guy taking pictures, and then pulled off. And so it is this lack of institutional control in the 30-day setting that is most concerning to us among all the other things.
Yeah, but you said that was a 30-day stay?
I think it was, because from the first time I photographed them to the last time was less than 30 days. But it is that the neighbors, and they would speak if they signed up or whatever, are concerned about the commercial use of the Airbnb. And then again, I raised this. There is now a hospice behind this property. As you saw from the pictures, there's a basketball court, cornhole, and there's noise that occurs from people using the property, because they're using the property, right? But there are now going to be invalids living 25 feet away. So another thought I might have would be to modify the quiet hours, which are currently from 10 to 8 or 9, I
10 to 8.
10 to 8, to go from 6 p.m. until 8 a.m. the next morning, just in consideration of the residents that will be there. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm trying to think of there was a couple things that I wanted to make reference to. to the original question, like there's not been any challenges. And so, like we work very hard to be good neighbors. We work very hard to vet the guests that we have. And there's been a number of guests over this time period, and there's not been any challenges. The idea of overgrown grass and bushes, if you saw the pictures that they submitted, like they had to get on the property and get up close. We have our lawn team that comes once a week during the rainy season, and once every 2 weeks when it's not really raining and it's not growing as fast. So all the things that would be of concern, we've actually done those things over this time period and passed the, I don't know what the exact name for it would be, but then he also mentioned that there was a trailer in the driveway, which there's nothing against a trailer in a driveway. That's actually allowed to happen. And there's multiple, the bins that you dispose of stuff that are much larger than the trailer, again, all throughout the neighborhood. So it's not anything different, and that was for a 2-week period of time that was there. And we knew that was going to be there, and it was in the driveway, not unlike all the other trailers and trash things that are in the driveway up and down the street.
Anything else from the board? Nobody else signed up to speak on this one. Anything?
So, Mr. Cooper, I'll say it again. For me, I'd need a maximum of, I'll go to 7 guests, quiet hours from 9 to 8, maximum of 5 cars, no on-street parking, and a 1-year exception. It's the only thing I'd vote for on this.
With 4 bedrooms, we can't have 2 people per bedroom?
Yep, that's where I am.
I'm a little torn. I do want to take.
And there's 2 other votes you could win, so it's not just me. I'm just telling you where I am.
Yes, sir.
I am in agreement to take the application down to 1 year, but I have not seen mismanagement to the point of reducing, I think the gentleman asked for 6 guests. If there's 4 bedrooms, it would follow that 8 guests would be appropriate. What I'm wanting to understand is, I guess I'm still not clear on if in this last term of this rental, if we've had issues, because it's been stated that some of the photos that were submitted the first from the initial application where there was objections then, and so some of the same arguments are being raised. And what I would like to know is, are there new infractions after the application was approved?
All of the ones we just mentioned.
Oh, Kent, you're going to have to come up front.
All of the pictures that were submitted with our objection came after the exception was granted last year. All of them. Everything I've talked about is after that exception was granted. Nothing before.
So when the applicant states to the on-street parking that it was just the one instance of the missionaries, is that accurate? Or?
No.
Okay. Can you tell me, so you have documentation that your photos are from the period since this application has been approved?
As best as I can operate a cell phone, which is not very good, there are dates on it, but they were, the one with the orange Dodge or whatever was 5 days after the end. So that's within a time, something was already going on. The gentleman I spoke to was 2 months ago. The other pictures, I don't know how many other pictures of cars there were, but I can bring my witnesses up to attest to the number of times other cars are parked on the street related to that house. We just asked that it be really monitored, I know you can't monitor it, but that it be referenced and enforced that the parking stay in the driveway.
Yeah, I don't have a problem.
And then that's happened more than often because it's a stop sign. And so if cars are parked there, we can't get in and out. Emergency vehicles can't get in and out. And I can't drive by there every day and check. I don't live on that street. But the residents do, and the residents are unhappy with the number of times that Perhaps it is just visitors, but visitors can park in the driveway. There are plenty of parking spaces. Would you like to hear from Ms. McDermott or Ms. Canera?
No, that's fine. I mean, if I think this, it goes back to what I stated to the previous group. A lot of the concerns, a lot of the things that you guys have brought up are things that are outside of our control.
I understand that.
The management piece is what I'm focused on, and unfortunately, I can't look at, you know, how the hospice is being operated. Or the fact I'm only focused on this property and this property as it's being operated as a short-term rental. So I'm squarely just focused on instances or infractions that have occurred since the application was approved.
Well, if you can say with the 12-month window, we'll operate with it.
That's where I'm at. I'd be curious to hear where Board Member Mitchelson is on it.
Let me ask a question. Could you just clarify who's currently in the property and who's been renting it since May? We're a little unclear on if that's a short-term person or a long-term rental. Could you clarify that?
Yes, ma'am. So in May, there was someone who had already booked. There was a group that stayed there for about 2 weeks, and it was a work group. The group that is there now is a family, and they'll be there through November.
Regarding the issues, regarding the number of occupants, okay, let me confirm, this is a 4-bedroom property. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. It's a large four-bedroom, 2.5 bath home.
Okay. I would tend to say that 8 people is reasonable. You know, I'm thinking that, but I would be curious to hear more from my fellow board member about the reduction to 7, because there might be something that I'm missing.
Well, we could have any number up, you know, try to envision 8 grown men who are going to work at 7 o'clock in the morning being in 2 bathrooms. I mean, there's all kinds of things. What I'm trying to do is just pare this down to make it more palatable for the neighbors. That's the only reason. And we see each one's case by case.
You know, I'm also concerned about the fact that I look at the total circumstances here, and there have been complaints and there have been some issues and various concerns raised. So, you know, I would be willing to consider the 7. And then the change in the quiet hours. Let me just ask you this, Mr. Cooper.
Yes, ma'am.
Of the people who are currently there, you
Yes,
said it's a
ma'am.
family.
Yes,
How many
ma'am.
people are in that family?
There's a husband and a wife and 2 children, and then they have someone else who stays with them fairly regularly as well, too.
I'm also supportive of the 1 year, because there have been problems, and I think that, you know, it's a balancing that we have to do here, and I think that my fellow board member, Mr. Uday, has expressed quite eloquently what we're, you know, the limitation of our scope and what it is we're trying to do. So I would certainly support, in order to try to balance everyone's interest here, having 7, changing the quiet hours, and having it 1 year and let's see how things go, then I would support that if someone wants to make that motion.
I did want to share, if it matters from a context standpoint, just to share. There were a number of complaints before we actually did anything. Our very first guest was a resident of the neighborhood, you know, the very same neighborhood, who was doing renovations on their home. They ended up staying about 6 weeks. And they went to the board and they told the board how much we screened before, like we didn't know they were a neighbor in the neighborhood at first, how much our screening process and vetting process was, how wonderful a stay it was, you know, nothing but high accolades. And they've expressed that to the board a number of times, and she actually told me, she said, Jeff, I'm so sorry, I keep telling them what a good job you guys do, but they just are dead set on complaining about it. And so the complaints they're saying that things happen, and they even said, like, there's not been noise complaints, like all these things are projection, maybe, and we've been there, and it hasn't happened. And so I guess I just wanted to suggest that they've determined already in advance that they're going to say things and put up complaints and put up challenges and issues, but none of the things are actually, I mean, they said that the grass is too long. The pictures don't reflect grass too long. The one picture that they had of cars in the street was that one time. And so it just, like, we're doing what we're supposed to do, and they're not really having complaints. And so I just wanted to share that history as well, too.
Anything else from the board? Okay, I think we're ready for a motion then.
So to me, it sounds like, Mr. Cooper, you don't want to go to 7 guests and you don't want to go to a maximum of 5 vehicles.
I prefer to keep it the way.
Well, I know what you prefer to do, but today, right now, I need to make a motion, and I'm not going to make a motion in the 4 without that.
You're not going to make a motion what?
4.
Oh, the way it is. So if we can do eight guests, and you said 5, you said down to 5?
7 guests, 5 vehicles. Yes?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, with that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve case number 15708 on the basis that it meets the statutory requirement for a special exception subject to the self-imposed rules with the modifications of a maximum of 8 guests, quiet hours from 9 p.m. to 8 a.m., maximum number of vehicles 5, no on-street parking for a term of 1 year.
Okay, well, are we saying 8 guests maximum or 7?
7.
7, okay. I'll second. Okay, now we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. You're approved for a year.
Item number 7 is case number 15709, a renewal application for special exception of Jeff Cooper of Just Like Home Rentals LLC to allow lodging accommodations, home sharing at 810 Northeast 50th Street.
Yes, my name is Jeff Cooper, and I would like to have the renewal application for a special exception for 810 Northeast 50th Street, as is written in the application.
Okay. I don't have anybody signed up on this one. Does anybody want to address the board on this application? Anything from the board?
And Mr. Cooper, you didn't have any code complaints or any protests on this one?
No, sir, not that I'm aware of.
The only thing that I think that was deferred for was the fact that it was not a timely renewal. And so with that, just a 1-year exception.
3. Can we do 3 years? Like
Well,
with the
because it
others?
wasn't a timely renewal, I think that's why it was a 1-year exception, back to a 1-year exception. But it was the same dates as the last one.
What about maximum number of guests?
That's what I was looking for. There's 5 spaces. Does that include the driveway, or the garage, I mean?
It could actually fit about 12.
So 5 is good with you? Yeah, it's a long driveway.
Sir, how many do we have?
In the application, it says 5.
Yes, sir.
quiet hours from 9 PM to 8 AM. Quiet hours from 9 PM to 8 AM.
So adjusting it from 10?
Yeah, to
Yes,
9.
sir. That's fine.
Any other questions or comments? I think we're ready for a motion then.
I do want to state that this property is across the street from property that I personally own, but I don't believe that that's going to affect my decision to render an unbiased opinion.
Do we have a motion then?
With that, I'd like to make a motion to approve case number 15709 on the basis that it meets the statutory requirement for a special exception, subject to the self-imposed rules with modifications to quiet hours from 9 PM to 8 AM and a one-year term.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. You're approved.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Item number 8 is case number 15715, a renewal application for special exception of Lana Evans of Denmar Investments LLC to allow lodging accommodations home sharing at 8705 South Youngs Boulevard.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Sutter, S-U-T-T-E-R, husband of Lana Evans, representing Denmar Investments. So we're seeking a renewal of the home sharing exception.
Not on this one. Now, does anybody want to address the board on this application? Okay.
With that, Mr. Sutter, I'd like to make just, I think one modification
Okay.
to the renewal would be to add quiet hours from 9 PM to 8 AM.
Yes, sir.
And you say you can put 4 cars can you put cars in the garage?
Yes, there's
Okay.
two-car garage, and then the driveway can easily support 2 cars. I don't think we've ever had that many, but it's possible.
And it's going to be for a term of 1 year.
Well, I requested, I think, 3 or 5. I don't
Yeah,
remember.
and it's a renewal, but I think it expired in March.
Well, I think, can I speak to that for just a minute? So we got the renewal application, we filled it all out, sent in the check. The city cashed the check, and we were unclear really that you have to just start the whole process from the ground up again, getting your 300-foot list and all those required documents. You know, my renewal ended up being 79 pages to the city with all the different folks. So there's a real misunderstanding there that we thought we had completed the renewal in that case, and we actually subsequently received a fine from the city of $150. And if we don't pay that fine in the next few days, there'll be a bench warrant for our arrest based on this home share. So it was a big misunderstanding, I think. I wrote a letter to the city, and then she explained to me that, yeah, you got to just start from ground zero and do it all over again. So I do want to say it's very confusing from my standpoint on that matter. So I feel like that we did everything that we thought we were supposed to do right, and we're asking for a 3-year exception, at least, if that's possible.
Well, and I'll just say again, as precedent, when the term of the license has been out for this long, we've just gone back to 1 year.
Okay.
I didn't see any quiet hours.
I added
Okay.
quiet hours to it, 9 PM to 8 AM.
Okay. All right. Anything else from the board? I think we're ready for a motion.
With that, I'd like to make a motion to approve case number 15715 on the basis that it meets the statutory requirement for a special exception, subject to the self-imposed rules with modifications to quiet hours from 9 PM to 8 AM, a maximum of 4 vehicles for a term of 1 year.
We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. You're approved.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Item number 9 is case number 15690, a renewal application for special exception of Barrel Faux on behalf of Red Rock Ridge Properties LLC to allow lodging accommodations, home sharing at 10913 Rock Ridge Road.
Hi, my name is Shunmin Su. I'm the owner of Red Rock Ridge Properties LLC. And here for a renewal application for the property located at 10913 Rock Ridge Road. Zip code 73120.
Mr. Chair, you have some people signed up.
Let's see, number 9. Yeah, we've got a couple folks. And I think I saw one protest in the packet, but anyway. How about, looks like Brian Van Landingham?
Yes, my name is Brian Van Landingham at 11,000 Rock Ridge Road, across the street. I included in the packet that I submitted photos from the stuff that was submitted to the Action Center. They've regularly had 11, 12, 20 cars, multiple people. The other day they had a basketball team from Texas and a school bus. It's been a nuisance. John, who will speak later, has had to call the cops at least 3 to 5 times. They've had 48 code violations per the report, if you see from Cindy, and I strongly oppose it. We're losing one neighbor because of the Airbnb. They've decided to move out of the neighborhood. So.
And then I've also got John Houston.
I sent in a package on the first meeting that was postponed. Do you guys have that? I sent a whole bunch of information, pictures and stuff.
Yeah, we have it.
Have mine? Yeah, I live next door to the place, and it's been hell, to tell you what. It's been ugly. It's been disturbing. You know, you say quiet hours. Is that effect on this program? They're up to 6, 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock to the wee hours of mornings. You know, the house is insulated, so we don't hear it until you let the dog out and you hear all this crap going on. And the biggest disappointment I have is that I have grandkids that come over to use our swimming pool, and they go, "Grandpa, what are they cooking out there?" I was like, "Well, that's not food, it's marijuana." And I called the police department, and what do they say? Medical marijuana, they can't enforce it, you know? So what are you gonna do? And it's terrible. And they're not supposed to have parties. They've had funeral parties there. They have birthday parties there. You know, they have 10 cars, but people drop off all their kids. And they have all these kids in the pool, and they're screaming. And you don't want to be an old butthead like me and go, "You can't have fun on graduation." You know, calm down, quiet it down. But it's crazy. And they throw things over the fence into my pool and stuff. And my wife, you know, doesn't want to call the police because she's afraid that the people are going to come over and kill us, you know. She goes, no, don't call the police, you know, and she's fearful, you know. And she doesn't want the grandkids coming over to stay with us because of all the noise and stuff. So it's, you know, it's very disturbing and stuff. And they have bedding out there for about 4 weeks. They did change the bedding and stuff, and that's very, very disturbing. And Rock Ridge Road is very busy. It leads out to Hefner Road and all those cars and stuff. So it just adds to the whole craziness of it. So it's been a terrible, terrible time. And I mean, how do you enforce the quiet time? Do you call the police? Do you say they're violating the quiet time? You need to shut them down? I mean, how do you do that? I mean, how do you enforce that? And it's a party house, you know? It's not a rental house. I mean, bless my heart, if I wanted a party house, I would go there. It's a fun place. They got pool tables, foosball tables, they have a hot tub, have a swimming pool, they have a barbecue. The pools is heated all the time. And it's a party house, and it rents for 16 people. And they have more than that at times and stuff. And, you know, yeah, there's 8 cars in the driveway, but there's people coming to visit them. So there's a lot more people in the house than it appears as far as the car is. So it's just, it's very disturbing. And, you know, we retired in Quail Creek to have a nice, quiet neighborhood, to know our neighbors and stuff. And you know, short term, they're probably good people, but you don't know them. You know, you kind of go, I don't know them. And so it's just not a good environment for a neighborhood place. It's just, it's very sad, and it kind of takes away from the whole neighborhood.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I don't have anybody else signed up. Oh, wait a minute, I got a volunteer in the back.
Hi, my name's Dax Strickland. I live in the house directly behind the property here. We share a fence, and I knew the neighbor that lived here before, and he's actually my contact for the Airbnb. And he talked to me before becoming an Airbnb and asked what my thoughts were, and I said I wasn't going to pass judgment ahead of time. I'd give it a year. I'd give it the period. I've had to call and text him numerous times, and I've actually had to call the police also for noise. There's a pool and a hot tub and a garage that opens facing backwards, where they have a pool table and game tables. And so all hours of the night, like John mentioned, midnight to 4 a.m., you've got large speakers with bass, which we can hear through our walls and windows. You've got parties. And it's hard to define a party. Is it an invitation was sent out, or is it, 3 people? Sometimes it's one person in a hot tub that's as loud as a party. So I don't think that there's a good way for the owners to monitor that. I don't think it should be the responsibility of the neighbors to monitor that. I do recall that there was a device that's supposed to monitor noise and party size. I don't know that that's used, and if it is, it doesn't capture the noise on the outside of the house, which is a big issue. So I'm not necessarily opposed to Airbnbs in general. I don't love sharing a fence with one and a backyard with one, but I think that if there is going to be something like this, there's got to be a little more control over what's happening in the properties, the noise, the people, the size of the parties, and so forth. So that's all I had today.
Thanks.
Okay.
Mr. Mann, so yeah, could you answer some of those questions?
I think in
for us?
response to, first and foremost, the noise monitoring system, we did have one inside the property, and I wasn't made aware of a lot of these complaints until recent from code enforcement. Cynthia had reached out, and that's when I personally became aware of it. And the safeguard that I put in place now is that same monitoring device has also been placed in the back patio. And I think that was a big problem that the interior device inside the property was not capturing. When the door's closed, the home is properly insulated. It's not really notifying myself of the potential nuisances that could be occurring in the backyard where the pool area is at. And since installation of that, I've been able to, because what it does is it monitors the noise and it alerts me immediately on my cell phone. And the moment I see that, I immediately check. Now I'll also have cameras on the front, facing the front yard to monitor the number of vehicles that are at the property, as well as a camera facing the back that monitors the swimming pool as well as the hot tub. And that really, again, once that minute device goes off, it informs me of loud, above normal decibels. Then I check immediately the backyard camera, and I used to live at this property for 2 years, and I live down the street right now, about 7 minutes away. As soon as I notice, I reach out to the guests, and if needed, I show up and arrive at the property immediately to address any potential issues.
So you're the property manager?
I had a property manager that actually came on my behalf last year. Her name was Burl Falk. And, again, once I received the notices from code enforcement regarding, a lot of the issues that have come up, I have since taken over the property managing side of it myself.
Do you own the property too?
Yes, I own the property,
Okay.
Red Rock Ridge.
It just sounded like he was calling someone else, and that's why I wasn't sure.
Yeah,
Maybe
the
the
property
previous
was purchased
owner.
by myself, and I had transferred the name from Shunminsu over to Red Rock Ridge Properties LLC.
Okay.
It is, I believe, in the records as well.
And I remember when this came for the first time for the initial application, and it's a large house, and if you look at the application, what they agreed to was a maximum of 6 guests, a maximum of 3 cars in the driveway, and I feel like they totally disregarded everything that they had here. So I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not in favor of renewing this application. I don't, for any reason at all.
Yeah.
And the board, just because of the number of code violations, we do have a member of code enforcement here if you had any questions. I just want to thank him for coming if you don't.
Questions or comments for code enforcement? Okay. All right. Anything else? Nobody else signed up to speak, so I think we're ready for a motion.
Do you have anything to say? Anything else?
I mean, I definitely want to be a good neighbor, to the neighbors that protested today. And again, I resided at the property. I'm familiar with that area. I live close by still. I have taken over the reins, you call it, for property management and ensuring that we properly vet through each guest that comes through. And, I'm going to be making sure that if approved, and I have the blessing of everyone here, is that I'm going to be monitoring definitely personally the videos as far as the cameras that are currently facing the front and backyards, as well as the noise monitoring device to ensure that, no future nuisances are, occurring and reoccurring. And if I have the blessing, I would like to extend for another year to be able to at least prove that, that this can be a good Airbnb for, visitors, and that the management team can be trusted and can be relied on to make sure that, the guests that come through are vetted through and are a good fit for the community.
Questions or comments? I think we're ready for a motion.
I'm going to make a motion to deny, so if anyone wants to discuss, or you good?
Okay. Do we have a second?
Well, let me make the motion
Oh,
to
go ahead. I
make
thought you
motion
did.
to deny case number 15715.
Yep. Was that the right number?
Yeah.
15690,
Sorry.
yeah.
Make a motion to deny case number 15690.
Got it, okay. Second? Got a motion and a second. And this is to deny the application. Cast your votes.
You may have to refresh.
Where's my refresh?
It says waiting.
There it goes.
Okay. Now cast your votes. Denied.
Item number 10 is case number 15704, an appeal by Williams Box Forshee and Bullard PC on behalf of RGW Real Estate Holdings from the decision of the Historic Preservation Commission on case number HPCA 240023, located at 424 Northwest 27th Street.
Good afternoon. David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. Also here with me is Tim Johnson. Mr. Johnson's company, Johnson Associates, is the firm that provided a structural analysis as it relates to this application. So what is before you procedurally is an appeal from the Historic Preservation Commission. We made application to HP and were denied, and so the way that the ordinances are drafted, the appeal comes to you. Now, it is worth noting that under your ordinances, the appeals here are tried de novo. You've all sat through appeals now, so I understand you know that it means a trial anew. No deference is given to what happened at HP. You are put in the position of HP to interpret and enforce the ordinances and guidelines as they exist. So when we look to the guidelines, what we are told is that in order to demolish a house, there are a couple paths. The path that we ultimately selected was a structural path. And what the ordinance tells us is that if the structure is in a state of decay or ruin and possesses an imminent threat, or excuse me, poses an imminent threat to public health or safety, and the demolition of said structure is required to alleviate said threat. Now, this is a two-part application. We seek to demolish the front house and what you see there, which is, I believe, probably a former garage, was converted to living space. The analysis of that is set out differently, and there's other factors. When I was first contacted by the property owner, as I am any time that there's a demolition in question in an HP area, my first call is to an engineer. Although I may pretend to play one on Thursdays and Tuesdays at this podium, I am not one, and I don't possess the requisite skill to look at something and say whether or not it meets the criteria set out in the guidelines. So we called Mr. Johnson. Only after Mr. Johnson sent his team out and did a thorough analysis and provided a summary of their findings did we conclude that, in fact, we met the regulations. And therefore, we then filed an application to seek demolition of both structures that are on the property. What Mr. Johnson is going to tell you here in a few moments is that, in fact, his conclusion is that the structure is in such a state of decay or ruin, and it poses an imminent threat to the public health or safety, and that the demolition of the structure is the only way to alleviate the threat. We are the only party in this application that has a licensed structural engineer that has reviewed the property, made findings, and come to the conclusion that the ordinance requires prior to a demolition. Everything else you'll hear is one of emotion, and we don't want it to be torn down. Luckily for us, you are guided by ordinances, guidelines, and a de novo review. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Johnson to walk through his analysis.
Good afternoon, Tim Johnson with Johnson Associates. As David mentioned, we do have a team. It's not just me, thankfully, that we use to investigate properties like these, small office buildings, things like that, that are in poor shape or in decay. I have 2 registered building inspectors on my staff and 1 in training. One of my building inspectors taught the OSU class for most of the inspecting programs that Oklahoma City has for both Oklahoma City inspectors and people that come to your house and inspect a house you're going to buy. Those are courses that are required to have a license. My inspector that worked with me on this one, Mr. Meltebarger, was the professor for that class for about 10 years. So besides my 48 years of doing this and his multiple years of working on this, we've had a lot of experience looking at structures such as this that are in a state of disrepair such that they're no longer safe for the public. The report you have in front of you really defines the structures very well. The main house, even though it's 1 story, it's built on a CMU block with appears to be no foundation underneath it. There's a rollout of the exterior blocks. There's a lot of movement under the house, the floor joists. You can see in this bottom picture, there's a cross timber there that's not even touching the floor joists. And so when you walk in the house, the floor moves up and down several inches. And it's just an unstable condition. There's a lot of dry rot that's in this semi-basement area that's part of the main house. Besides the structural aspect of it from an engineering standpoint, we look primarily at the foundation, secondarily at the load-bearing walls, and third at the roof condition. In this particular place, there are a lot of water damage under the siding, and like this picture here that shows the decay of the CMU block. Basically, it's just blocks sitting on top of a block. Any lateral movement would shift this off of its foundation. And we do get a lot of wind in Oklahoma. And so as part of, as far as the outside of, four walls of the building, the primary four walls of the building, they're in a state of disrepair because of the water damage that has been allowed to occur over many, many years, both with the soffit and the wood siding and plastic siding. And then finally, for the main house, there's a lot of damage in the attic with regard to the roof rafters have been damaged and warped and are sinking, and it's a simple four-gable roof, four-hip roof, that all the load falls on those units. There's been a lot of repair, scabbed on 2x4s up in the attic. And then the back building is, from a standpoint of structural, again, you look at the foundation, the walls, and the roof. This doesn't have a foundation. It was a garage slab. It's got a two-story building built on a garage slab with no footing or foundation. There is water seepage on the first floor from the surrounding properties. Underneath the wooden walls into the concrete floors. The stairwell up to the upper floor is inadequately built. It's not stable. It's not safe to even walk on, in my opinion. And so, not to beat the dead horse to death, if you look at page 3 of the report, there's a paragraph in the middle of the page that summarizes, and I would just encourage you to read those. We don't think that to salvage this building and bring it up to code, there would be nothing historical saved to do that. It would require a complete demolition down to the foundation to bring it back up. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
I don't have any real questions. I did go to the property and walk around it, and I'm not a professional engineer either, but I saw the same things that you've reported here.
Any other questions from the board? I've got a couple of folks signed up on this one. Ready? Tammy Dowell.
Tammy Donnell, 601 Northwest 27th Street. Thank you for letting me speak today. I would like to ask that you not allow the demolition of these two places. My dad, granddad, and uncle built the back unit after they came back from the war. My granddad was a rough-end carpenter that worked for G.A. Nichols. He built several of the homes in the area. This house and the front house and back house are in the state they are because of slumlords that have bought and have rented to folks and not done maintenance and care. And even the HP board, one of the members stated that the place is in the state it is because of neglect. And I live up the street and I work on 8 houses. It's constant maintenance. And I'm sorry, this slumlord lives in Dallas, and you cannot take care of your places when you live in another state. So it is historically significant. It has a pyramid roof, the front house does. It's a unique feature in the neighborhood. And again, to tear down these units would just leave a gaping hole in the area. So it is historically significant, and there is a letter from Ron Franz, who is a retired now architect, stating the significance of the property. So the HP board did not get it wrong, and they denied the request. So I ask that you do likewise. Thank you very much for your time.
Questions? I've got one more, David Bigham.
Hi, David Bigham, 322 Northwest 27th. I'm also the president of Jefferson Park Neighbors, the neighborhood association. I understand what Mr. Box said, that you've got to look at this fresh. It's going to be hard for me to convince you without having examined the property that I know better than Johnson Associates. But I can tell you I have a lot of hands-on experience. I've crawled under and we've restored structures that look way worse underneath the conventional foundation, and we've repaired the foundations along the perimeter of a single-story house personally. So I know this could be repaired. You have to then ask yourself the question, is it the right thing to do? Is that because of finances that it's the right thing to do or not the right thing to do? Is it cheaper just to start new? Because certainly it could be repaired. In case it missed you in the packet, the current owners own the property for 15 years. So it's not like somebody else neglected the property and they inherited it and now they have a problem on their hands, right? So if water is allowed to get in and cause issues, it's on them, not somebody else. Just wrap up by telling you that the neighbors on the street, I live on the street about a block away. The neighbors that are closer than me that are across the street and adjacent to this property have all expressed their same position that they would like to see the property restored and not torn down, not demolished. I know that our process is completely separate. Getting permission to tear down a property is completely separate from getting permission to put something back up later. I would just say that I don't know if you can take that into your process of consideration. The possible motivation of somebody is to probably put something back that's most likely much more dense than a single family up front and an accessory dwelling unit in the back. But again, I'm not sure if you would be allowed to consider that, but I certainly suspect that is the case. It's not just a matter of wanting to, put back another house very similar to the one that's there. So we definitely had a neighborhood meeting. Lots of people gave input. The overwhelming majority said, no, it should be restored, not demolished. So that's our position. I'd be glad to answer any questions from the neighborhood or from my history personally restoring properties similar to this one. So.
Okay. Questions, comments from the board?
Just a couple of comments. And so you realize that if this property was demolished and they wanted to make changes, they then have to go to the Planning Commission to make those changes. They'd have to go through the historical preservation committees to make those changes. And so there's a lot of oversight that would be done in order to build a new property.
Trust
right
me,
here.
I've been through those processes.
And so
I've been through opposing the processes to get spuds and go much more dense. So I expect that'll be our next step. If you approve demolition, I'm 95% confident we're going to be battling out, what should go in its place. And I'm going to be arguing that it should be something similar to what was there, and the council will be arguing, nope, there are plenty of eightplexes in that neighborhood. It should be an eightplex. So we'll have that fight when it comes time if you allow demolition. But I can tell you, the fact that there's a gap between a support beam and that can be, we've repaired those. We've put in nice pads and jacked things up and put braces underneath. We've even taken floors that were had huge humps in them, like several inches, a foot maybe even, and repaired that. And we have a beautiful oak floor. We were able to save about 80% of the oak we pulled out and only put back in 20%. So, in the HP case, we made comments, we wrote letters that if you just demolish everything that's there and build something brand new, there's pretty decent environmental impact to consider, right? We're just throwing away all the stuff that's there and putting it in the dump and using all brand new materials to build something new when it could be restored with a lot less material. So
there's not much left of this property.
What's that?
There's not much left of this property. All four out, the walls are deteriorated. Like I said, I walked around this last night. You're taking it all the way to the ground and bringing it all the way back with new material. It's dilapidated. So again, you have a professional engineer that's signed off on it. I'd leave it up to the professionals and rely on the Historical Preservation Committee or Commission and Planning Commission to put back something that was right.
And I think I see Katie over here.
Yeah,
Questions or comments for her?
Yeah, I mean, I'd just like to hear from Katie and what she thinks. I did listen to the meeting and heard it. I don't know that one of the commissioners went and looked at the property. No one said that in the meeting. So-
I don't know either. I don't recall if anybody went out and looked. I know several of them typically do. I don't know if anybody did with this particular one. We very rarely get applications to demolish a primary structure. We've had a handful in the 12 years that I have been staff to the HP Commission. So they hold those to an extremely high bar. The ordinance establishes an extremely high bar. I mean, it says imminent threat to public health and safety that can be alleviated through no other means than demolition. Not that alleviating it through some other means is unreasonable or financially inviable, but that there's no other way to fix it. That's how the commission views that language. And we have.
But isn't there something about the financial viability of it? That was another thing. I just
there
didn't
is a
understand it,
criterion
but-
for them to consider under there's no, what is the word? There is an economic criterion. There's a specific process that must be gone through. The city manager's office actually has to appoint an economic review board. The applicant has to submit financial documents on the property. They have to demonstrate that they've attempted to find a buyer for the property. It's a lot more intensive than what some of our other design review bodies have, where you just kind of show, well, it would be really expensive to fix it, and it would be cheaper if I didn't fix it. HP's is much more laborious, and that was not pursued in this case by the applicant.
Is it true that the only real historic property is the actual home? Because the garage was built way after. There's an addition to the back of the building that was built after. So it's just the home that has historic.
The garage was built in the 40s. It's well over 50 years old at this point. So I think from HP Commission's perspective, it still had historic significance to it. It's not original to the property. It's not within the kind of primary time period of development of Jefferson Park, but it's certainly not a new building, and it doesn't appear to have had notable alterations to it. So that, I think, was considered to be potentially historic as well.
Well, I drove all of Jefferson Park last night just to see if there was anything close that looked like this property, and there actually wasn't. I mean, I think every other house in Jefferson Park is occupied or being remodeled or lived in. And this property is obviously deferred maintenance. I heard that a lot in the commission meeting. And there's been a lack of maintenance. There's trees growing out of the property that are 16, 24 inches. I mean, that didn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
So, understand, it's in not good shape.
Yeah.
I think for me, the only question that I have for you is, according to Tim Johnson's report, he's not saying that it can't be salvaged, it's just that what it would take to salvage it would remove anything of historic value. Like, have you gone through that and determined that that's the case? Like, I tend to agree. I'm in construction. I'm quite familiar with it. It's in pretty bad shape. But as we weigh the historic value, that's the part that I think that I'm struggling with. If it were to be completely gutted and stripped down, are you guys in disagreement with the idea that all historical value has been removed at that point?
So we see houses rebuilt, substantially rebuilt, little by little over time, where you are getting a significant amount of new fabric. It usually is done through the course of maintenance when a building is taken care of, instead of all at once, because everything's been allowed to deteriorate for a couple of decades. But just because components of a house have been replaced over time and are now new fabric, that doesn't mean it's no longer a historic structure. If it matches what was there historically, if that's been documented, if that's been matched, it can still retain that historic integrity. Secretary of the Interior standards that the National Park Service uses, that they use for historic tax credits, allows for reconstruction, total reconstruction of a building that has burned to the ground. We don't require that. We don't typically see that, but in our view of it, you can rebuild a significant portion of a historic structure, and if you go back matching what was there, then it still retains that historic integrity. But yes, it's a difficult situation when you're looking at taking it virtually all the way down to nothing and putting back all new fabric, so.
And so would a remodel building permit bring a lesser standard than an actual new building permit in the rebuild?
Since it still has to come through HP.
For the design review?
Yeah.
So if they were remodeling, then we would be looking at the existing historic structure, and we would be looking at matching what was there as far as all of the architectural details and the size and the roof form, all those things. If the structure was gone and they came in to build something new, the guidelines allow for you to recreate what was there and exactly match it if it's been documented, but they don't require it. The guidelines talk about new construction being compatible, approximating the lot coverage, the setbacks, the massing, the form, architectural character of the surrounding area, but it would not have to replicate what was there historically.
And, I understand the struggle that you're having. I would just point you back to the ordinance. I mean, the ordinance gives us the playbook for when you can demolish. You have to meet this very tough standard. That's why we hired Johnson & Associates. And so what his findings is on page 3 of 41 of his report, it is the opinion of the undersigned that these structures should not be inhabited and pose significant health risks. These structures are a high risk to the tenants and neighbors in the area. Further, the structures are in such a state of decay and ruin that they pose an imminent threat to the public health or safety, and demolition of said structures is required to alleviate the threat. And then you have multiple stamps from multiple professional engineers. So the ordinance gives us our guide as to when it's appropriate. Independent professional engineers have come to the conclusions required in the ordinance, both of which have put their professional seals on this report. We would ask that you follow the professional engineers who have found that we satisfied the ordinance.
Well, I'm inclined to support that idea. My question was really just along the lines of if there was a chance for it to be saved, evaluating whether or not that had any real weight, if there would no longer be any historic value anyways.
No. I mean, as Commissioner Noble said, one of the things that is, I guess, helpful for the neighborhood is we can't just go build something. We will have to undergo a process through Historic Preservation Commission, which is not an easy process to go through. So we will have to go through that process prior to building anything back. And the guidelines will then protect the neighborhood to ensure that something that is compatible and compliant is built there.
Any other questions or comments? And those were the only two folks that signed up to speak. Ready for a motion or
Anything else?
anything else?
And I don't like to go against the Historical Preservation Committee and their determination, but there is a professional engineer that was willing to stamp it that said that it met the ordinance. And so with that, I'll make a motion to approve case number 15715 as it meets on the basis that it meets the statutory requirement for a variance, right? No?
Well, it's
No,
an
it's an appeal.
To sustain the appeal.
Sustain the appeal.
Yeah, we sustain or deny it.
Yeah, to sustain the appeal.
Second?
Okay. The motion and the second is to sustain the appeal, which would reverse the decision of the HP Commission, correct? Okay. Cast your votes.
Thank you.
Okay. Next one's deferred.
The last item, number 11, has been deferred. You reached the end of your individual items.
Okay. I'm going to do communications and reports. We don't have any committees. Anybody have anything they want to say? Rita?
No.
Okay. Citizens to be heard? I don't have any other business. So now, let's take up item 5, additional items A1 and A2. Procedurally,
Okay, the
I'm-
next two items on your docket are related. The first one is a recommendation on a proposed ordinance regarding changes to Chapter 59, which is the zoning code regarding home sharing. And item 2 is a recommendation on a proposed ordinance affecting home share licenses, which is Chapter 13. You will vote on these separately, but Lisa Cronister is here to talk to them together.
Thank you. Go.
Yes, good afternoon. Lisa Cronister, Assistant Planning Director. Like Sarah was saying, here to talk to you about potential proposed, updates to the home sharing ordinances. So I'll talk about a little bit about the background of home sharing regulations, how they started, a synopsis of home sharing activity since our current regulations went into effect. Talk a little bit about, which I only need to spend a couple of seconds on, what you all consider because you are the ones considering it. Then I'll go over the outreach we did to develop the proposed changes and then go over in a little bit more detail about what those changes are. So the existing regulations were adopted at the beginning of 2019. It was adopted in 2 different chapters of the code. One, in Chapter 13, that is what established that all home shares had to have a license. It established the fee for those. It also established the fee and the process for the special exceptions. And it included some guidance for the revocation of a license, basically based on code violations. Then the Chapter 59 portions are what defined home sharing as a use that doesn't exceed a 30-day stay. And it detailed the requirements for a special exception, specifically that the property is not the primary residence of the host, and that also a special exception is required if the home share is in a historic preservation zoning district. So since 2019, as of last summer, there were almost 700 licensed home shares. Home shares are all over the city. As you're probably aware, they're not only clustered in one ward or the other, they're all over. And as of like last week, there were a little over 200 special exceptions that weren't expired. And special exceptions have been the bulk of your agenda for the past several years. Considerations, which I heard again in waiting for my item, were our considerations that are common to all of your special exception requests, that the request is harmonious with the zoning district, that there's no adverse effect on neighboring properties, that parking should at least meet that of the zoning district, and things like operating hours or additional screening may be warranted for approval. And then specific conditions that you frequently impose on applications are maximum number of guests, typically based on the number of beds or the number of bathrooms, assessing really how much space is available for off-street parking. Applicants typically provide a photo or a diagram of where that parking is, and then asking the host to post rules of conduct and establishing quiet hours if the board feels that is necessary. So in last spring 2023, planning staff was asked by the city manager's office to conduct some focus groups with residents, with home sharing operators and hosts. We also met with everybody on Board of Adjustment, except, I'm sorry, Emily Kay, you weren't on the board yet. We met with all the board members. We also met with city staff, including municipal counselor's office, code enforcement, subdivision and zoning staff, licensing staff who are issuing the licenses. And we were specifically asked to meet with the focus groups to see if what changes might be made to the ordinances to address concerns that city council members had been hearing increasingly over the years. So from residents, we heard concerns, many of which were echoed in today's cases. Residents were very worried about noise from parties and late at night, too many cars on the street, difficulty, navigating their driveways because of all the street parking, a sense of community. That was maybe one of the biggest concerns we heard, that people didn't know their neighbors, and they felt that home sharing was eroding their sense of neighborhood stability. Concerns of home sharing being operated without the required special exceptions or licenses, and then enforcement, that there are limited options for calling in complaints after hours and on weekends, and it was difficult to relate some of the complaints to home sharing. For example, after hours noise complaints go to the police department. The police doesn't track whether or not those complaints are related to home sharing. They don't know if they are or not. They just track it as a noise complaint. So it's really hard to relate a lot of the enforcement calls to home sharing. Hosts and operators, they had several concerns. One, they felt pretty strongly that the operators who had gotten special exceptions, who had gotten licenses, that they were following the rules and that they were not the cause of some of the nuisance complaints. They also, on a related note, they felt there were few penalties for properties who didn't come into compliance with the established process. Also we heard a lot from residents that maybe if there was more transparency about who the host was, who the operator was, if there was more publicly available information about how to contact them after hours, that might help. But operators were really worried about privacy concerns. They were really worried about making the location too publicly available because it is empty often, and they didn't want to encourage crime or vandalism from an empty house. Board of Adjustment asked for just, maybe we could embed some more specific regulations, considering that after years of evaluating these applications, you have come to a pretty solid framework for approvals. But maybe we can embed some of those in the ordinance to help not just make consistent decisions, but to kind of be on record with applicants of the expectations of what was going to be approved. The city staff was mostly concerned with enforceability. How can we make some of the verifications we're asked to make? How can we count? How can we quantify and report on some of the concerns? So again, to back up to what is not changing in this ordinance, what is staying the same as what was adopted in 2019 is we're not changing the requirement that home shares require a license. We're not changing the requirement about what needs a special exception, whether that's not the primary residence of the host or whether it's in a historic preservation district. We're not changing the licensing fees, although licensing fees did recently change in a separate ordinance, and we're not changing the special exception fees. So the proposed changes to Chapter 13 would apply to all home shares. So all home shares need a license, so these would apply to those and not just to special exceptions, everyone. So we've added a definition of primary residence, and clarified what the proof for that has been, because that's been a topic of concern over the years on what does that mean, how do I prove it, how does staff prove that that's the case. It sets a maximum occupancy limit. We do have it between certain hours, and it's based on the number of bedrooms times 2 plus 2 additional. But at any one time, the maximum occupancy is 16. Again, aimed at curbing special events and crowds. And then over the years, residents have asked for more consideration of the fact that some covenants and deed restrictions and lease agreements don't permit home sharing. And there's been conversation over the years on the extent to which the board can consider that. And we have embedded some guidance in the Chapter 13 that says that the home sharing approvals don't invalidate covenants, deed restrictions, or lease agreements. So then for Chapter 59, changes would only be applicable to special exceptions. The changes specify a minimum stay of 2 nights. That was intended to address the concept of special events. And it's consistent with what we know other municipalities are doing, and it has been upheld in various challenges as something we could do. Reduce the maximum term for home sharing from 10 years, that's what's listed in the ordinance now, to 5 years. Again, to manage applicant expectations of what could be possible. Limit the number of home sharing SEs to not to exceed 10% of the units within any given block. I think somebody mentioned that earlier on one of the cases today. So that's 10% of the block of just where the home share is not the primary residence of the host. So there may be other home shares that are the primary residence, but this factor would just limit the ones that are not the primary residence. And this was very specifically in response to the concern of, in some neighborhoods, maybe there really is too many, and maybe the number really is eroding the sense of neighborhood stability. Establish off-street parking requirement of 1 parking space for every 4 occupants. That's very similar to what you consider now. Authorize the board to consider restrictive covenants, deed restrictions, or lease agreements. So that would be in the ordinance, that those are in your purview to consider. And then to clarify how a special exception is revoked. Today, you denied an application, and this would give more guidance on how to revoke one before the term expires. So I wanted to mention a couple of things. So the City Council introduced this ordinance several weeks ago. They referred it to Board of Adjustment and to Planning Commission for their review and comment and recommendation. We have taken it to Planning Commission twice, one at their study session, another at the introduction hearing. And I wanted to mention 2 comments they had for your consideration. One is that they thought we should reterm home sharing, that home sharing might not be, their concern was since it does provide for a process where the homeowner isn't actually living in the home, maybe it was not fully accurate, and they asked us to consider if we should reterm it, and staff agrees. We can add on is what we're proposing to do. So the title would be Home Sharing / Short-Term Rental. And then the Planning Commission asked us to clarify that if we needed more language to make it clear that the property owner must authorize a tenant to provide home sharing, and that information, I think, is already clearly spelled out in Chapter 13. So those were their comments. So we will go back to Planning Commission on September 12th for their recommendation. We're here today for yours, and then after Planning Commission and the board, we'll move on to 2 city council hearings. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions, comments?
Lisa, today, can we make changes to this, or should we make suggestions, or?
Yes, if you have suggestions for changes, you should make those. If it's yes, if it's something you want to be sure without question that we capture, I would ask that you include it in the motion.
Cool. Okay. Just some clarifications too.
Sure.
I don't like the idea of the hours listed for the maximum guests. I like 24/7 on the maximum guests. I don't know, I know it's in the license. I think Sarah and I talked about that, and also in the home share exception. But it's my assumption is that the applicant, when we give them a number of guests, that they believe it's 24/7 anyways. But
Right, yeah. I will see if we can do that. Yes, I understand what you're saying.
And then, I mean, I don't want to, I could get really deep into the weeds as we do this all the time. But the idea of making a special exception a minimum of 2 days, to me, is kind of irrelevant. If we're trying to stop parties, we stop the parties with the number of guests. To add directives that, first off, can't probably be enforced because we don't have the special exception police, the home sharing police that would go out and make sure that their advertisement to Airbnb or whatever says a minimum of 2 days. To me, that seems kind of not enforceable. Let's see how. And the idea on the concentration, the 10% limit, I think each one of them is one-off. Each special exception that we look at, there's areas in the city of Oklahoma City where more than 10% works. There's an apartment on a corner, and so you would, dwelling units, and try to figure that out and say, well, you can't do the whole apartment, you can only do 3 apartments, and then no one else could do it. But if you're surrounding a hospital and you have traveling nurses and you have a need, or you're surrounding a university and you have a need, I think that to put a maximum on there or not let us make those decisions here is kind of problematic to me.
You still got more?
Yeah, but
No,
go
go.
ahead.
Well,
I think the parking and the way we handle the off-street parking and is, handled in here on a per application basis. I don't know that we need to put a minimum or maximum in the ordinance. And then something I was thinking about is I would like to see us increase the fees for the license, increase the fees for the special exception, to then have the city of Oklahoma City be able to hire some enforcement. Just reviewing the Airbnb advertisements, the VRBO advertisements, and see that one matches the application, I think is something that would be very helpful for us when we are hearing them in the renewals, even today. they were advertising for 16 people, but the maximum in the application was 6. And there's nobody checking that.
Sure, yeah, I will mention, the city manager's office is evaluating third-party companies who are able to scan the advertisement websites and from that evaluate who has licenses, who doesn't, and that would be a start on confirming who is complying. So they are looking at how we can improve that.
And I do appreciate the fact that we can consider the private covenants. And I think direction for us, or written in directly into the ordinance on what that is and what it has to say, and even then staff could make the determination before it got to us, or even listed in the application.
Yeah, it would be on the application, and the applicant would attest.
Because even if we found it to be okay and we approved a special exception and the neighborhood still had it in the CCNRs, you couldn't operate a business, they could still go to district court and find it out there on what's a business.
And to that, so, well, I guess I want clarification on one thing first, which was, you said redefining primary residence. Can you tell us what that definition now will be?
Yes, give me 1 second.
So the primary residence, but the occupied residence, because it has to be the occupied residence, it doesn't need a special exception, right? Or is it?
Correct, yeah. So the new definition would be in Chapter 13. Primary residence means the dwelling unit where a host physically resides the majority of the year, as established by at least 3 methods of identification, such as driver's license, automobile registration, voter registration, homestead exemption, utility bills, tax, or banking documents. So 3 methods of identification, and then again, we're talking about that the host physically resides. The host may or may not actually be the property owner.
Right.
They may be a tenant who
Designated.
has permission.
Okay, so as long as they meet those requirements, that they're providing 3, whether they're a form of identification or a utility bill or something like that, then we're going to determine that that's their primary residence.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, the limitation on concentration, I think we need that 10% the way it's defined. I think that's a good wording and a good limitation. Because we've got some neighborhoods that have been converted to hotels, one house at a time. So I think this puts an end to that. And then I struggle, because we had it this docket and last, what's the definition of a new application and the definition of a renewal? And I didn't find it, but the way this is worded, when the time period expires, if the applicant desires to continue the use, the applicant shall file a new application. That tells me there's no grace period. So if your special exception expires August 15, and you turn in a renewal application August 16, it's not a renewal.
Correct. We call it a renewal, but I believe it's always technically been a new one, because it gets entered as a new case number. What is your, are you concerned, are you just wanting to see if there's a gap, or?
Well, there seems to be a gap, or because the process takes so long.
Yeah, you have to, think,
It's
make
like-
sure you're on the,
Yeah.
the docket.
So, right, is it at the docket, or is it at the time they turn in the application, and then that, because, like you said, it'll say renewal, but it's not, it should be new, because it's,
Can I say something
Yeah.
about how, because as the ordinance, as the moratorium first passed, and as staff kind of tries to figure all this out, I think what we're going to do going forward is we're just going to call them all application for special exception, and then in the body of your staff report, we'll let you know if there had been a previous
Okay.
one. So we've really been thinking about how to make this easier too, so.
Well, the one attorney that was here today made a good point. He let his special exception, so how come he's not subject to the moratorium? Well, in my mind, it was a renewal because he had one, now he messed up and let it expire. But if it was a new one, he'd have had to have come under the moratorium, and he probably couldn't have done it.
Right. If someone has expired and they file a new application, we don't care honestly if it's a renewal or not. If it's considered a new application coming under the moratorium, he still could have been here asking you for a new special exception, provided there were no more than 10% on the block. So the people that are, the people that we deal with that we're, I guess, concerned about would be, they've been doing home sharing, they have a license that maybe that hasn't expired, they have a special exception that just expired, but they didn't get their application in on time. Can someone swoop in and steal that if there's a 10%,
Yeah.
Yeah, and if the 10% or some other threshold is ultimately adopted, the timing of the renewal or new application will be particularly critical, because you can continue on if a block has over 10%, as long as everybody keeps up with their applications, they could continue on for some time. But if they don't, then they might not be able to renew it, because at that point they could be over the 10%.
I have a couple of questions. What is the process of notification for the expiration of a license? I mean, for example, in terms of like tag renewals, now they notify us by email a couple of months ahead of time, so we have the option, and I understand that this is the state and not the city, but we have the option of renewing even online, or we can go to our favorite tag agent and say hello and get our little sticker. Okay, what's the process of notification? Because I've noticed, at the last meeting and today, there were some people who have renewals and it doesn't show a break-in, they obviously renewed on time. But then there were several people who had a lapse in their, licensing. So what's our process?
Right, yeah, I've got I don't manage licensing.
Okay, so our understanding is that, licensing they send out an email. The applicant receives an automatic email. Ours do not always work. I will just tell you that right now, that the special exceptions, we are constantly asking for assistance to try to get that feature up and going, and we're asking now to back up the renewal time even more, because as you know, you have to file, at least 2 months in advance to be heard before your expiration date. So we are working with that. We're also working with our licensing department to find a way to align the license and the special exception. That's another problem. If you have a license that expires, say, in January, you might completely not realize that your special exception expired in August. And so we're working on with licensing, so that when an applicant comes here and is approved by you, that the licensing has the ability to change the date of the license. They can't go over a year, but align it with the date of the special exception. So we're working on all of these things, but I guess that if you are a professional property manager, I would expect you have some sort of system to make sure that you don't expire.
Yeah, and licensing, I know they are working on an online interface. That was something the operators we talked to really felt was important toward making sure people, that would help everybody keep current on all their applications.
And you mentioned outlining a new process for licenses to be revoked. Is that all handled through staff, or will any of that come before the board?
It would have to come before the board.
Can you outline what that would look like?
Yeah, let me find it real quick.
It's like 3 code enforcement violations.
Yeah, I think it already,
2 months exists.
okay, in your packet, chapter 13, paragraph 514, suspension, revocation, and denial, talks about how if there are 2 or more convictions on, or violations in the code within a 24-month period, or violate the provisions of this article, or engage in the causes of suspension. Okay, the supervisor of licenses, so the person managing the licenses shall investigate the matter and follow the procedures provided in chapter 26, which I don't have with me, but we
They'll
do.
lose their special exception, they lose their license.
Yeah, hold on. Yeah, so chapter 59 under 4250.f, revocation. This is for the special exception. So the one I just read was for the license, but for the special exception, yes, it has to come on action of the board. So a special exception may be revoked by subsequent action of the Board of Adjustment after 30 days' notice to the applicant and a public hearing before the board upon a finding that the conditions imposed on the issuance of the special exception have not been satisfied. So it has to go to public hearing.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but the threshold for that sounds really low. So if we establish a maximum of 3 cars on a given property with no on-street parking, all that a homeowner would need to do would be to simply document that there's 4 cars or that there's a car in the street, and that means that they haven't met those conditions, which would subject them to that hearing.
Public hearing.
Then a public hearing could be, they could request the public hearing to revoke it, yes.
Okay, so, and I want to get clarification on this because I think this is good because we've long since have told residents, hey, document this, you guys have to do it. And I feel bad because some of their complaints, they're valid, that they shouldn't have to be the ones policing somebody else's operation. But at the very least, I want to be able to give them something that has teeth. So if this passes, I would be accurate in advising a resident to document it and then take it to staff who can then get an agenda item for that special exception to be revoked. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes. Jill, do you want to say some more about that part?
I'm not exactly how sure it would work. So I believe a resident would bring a complaint to staff, and staff would have to docket it for the Board of Adjustment to consider.
Is it free?
Yeah, that's the next, yeah, who's paying for it?
Because it exists. I mean, it's in the ordinance. The only thing they did change was home sharing accommodations or the parcel on which it is located. So it's a current part of the ordinance.
I don't know about the fee. I think that's a question that we
Oh,
could.
the fee, I'm sorry.
I don't know if there's a fee. There's clearly a notice requirement, so normally there would need to be a fee. So we can talk about that with
Yeah,
staff
let me look into that,
after.
I'm not sure.
And a 30-day period is timely. I mean, someone files for it, pay the application fee, and in 30 days they're heard, or the next meeting within 30 days.
No, it's probably, see, for Board of Adjustment, I think it's about 6 to 8 weeks when you file till you're heard. Our mail requirement is 20 days. So we might need to look at aligning those.
Yeah, we might need, yeah.
And so, given that, and I've got another question that'll make it make sense. So, to Don's point earlier, like we're creating a system for a lot of these, but some require some special instances where it's just not going to fit within this new code. Do we have anything that speaks to somebody's ability to obtain a special exception outside of the guidelines that we're looking to establish? For instance, if somebody says, I want a home sharing license, I need a special exception because I don't live there. However, I'm aware that my neighbor next door is operating a short-term rental. I want to be able to do one. Well, this body would naturally be the place for a variance in the first place. Does it make sense to include some language that provides them a route to seek that, or is it just denied at the door? They can't get past staff to even get that application here.
Are you saying, can you vary the
10% rule.
the conditions? You're asking, can somebody come in to vary the conditions outlined in the SE process?
Correct.
Like the
Any of
parking,
them,
the
yes.
quiet hours, whatever. I believe the board still has the discretion to modify
So it would be,
what you approve.
so the process would look like to them then would be, they would submit the application for a special exception, but they would also submit an application for a variance?
No, they wouldn't, I believe they wouldn't technically need a variance. Like, it's still in your discretion to approve, like, I'll just use the 16 occupants, for example. You could still, and somebody from my municipal counselor's office, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe you could still approve 17, you could still approve 15. Is
Jill,
that-
and everybody, this is Jill Burnett who wrote this in our office. And
Yeah, Jill's been integrally involved in not just drafting what we have in front of you, but she has done a lot of research on not just what peer cities are doing, but what the legal precedents are for what we can try to regulate.
My understanding is that if the condition is in Chapter 59, that it can be varied.
You said can or
It
can?
can,
Okay.
but if it's in Chapter 13, that it cannot, is my understanding.
Okay, so if they want to vary one of the things in Chapter 59, they would have to file a variance?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
And so it would be like on, I think of some planning commission cases where there's a case and first the commission has to consider the variance before they consider the applicant, and there's some back and forth there.
So, I know this is kind of like several conversations going at once, but if we will potentially be hearing cases that don't naturally conform to the new language in Chapter 59, they want to increase the 10% rule, and then we may also be hearing cases brought by residents for the consideration of special exceptions to be revoked. Does it make sense to revisit the conversation of a staff approval for a very finite box, just to balance out the amount of cases? So we're going to have more, we're going to be hearing more cases for different things, can we establish a box and say, if you can check off all of these boxes, we're going to give you an approval at the staff level, and you don't have to come before Board of Adjustment.
Administrative approval.
Administrative approval. Because as much as I respect and look up to the work that Don does on Planning Commission, I don't have a desire to be here till 10 o'clock at some meetings, which is my fear if we increase the type of cases that we hear without also doing something about the ones that are pretty cut and dry.
Right, so the legal question is, can staff be given authority to approve SEs under certain confines?
Yes.
And I will double
Just
check.
as easy as ADUs.
Well.
Different place, I know.
Listen, yeah, some of you know, I've also been presenting about our accessory dwellings ordinance. Don has heard it all. I will check. I want to say we asked that question of Municipal Counselor's Office early in the process, but we can look at it again, to what extent we can give staff some discretion.
Am I creating more work for you?
I mean, you still
No,
have to.
actually, it might be less.
You still have to notice, right? You still have to notice.
No,
Well,
not if it's
so-
administrative.
Not to,
That's why I
not
was
to
wondering.
undo everything that's in this book that you're reviewing right now. But one of the way we do cell towers, telecommunication towers, is it's a conditional use, and if they meet all the conditions, then they're approved. But if they can't meet even one condition, then they come to you for a special exception.
We used
So
to have to
I'll
hear
float
all
that.
of
I don't, it's not a recommendation.
Yeah, those
I'm
are
just
really
saying
fun
there
to
is
hear.
one process that we currently do that.
Yeah,
So
so I don't know if we need to make that officially a part of our recommendation to City Council. If that's a conversation that just stays here, I don't know where the final determination is made on administrative approval. But I personally would feel comfortable inviting each one of these residents that has a problem, especially, you know, we heard from some groups today that, I don't want to speak for them, but it appeared that they felt helpless. And so giving them some power to say, you guys can come before us just as easy as the applicant can, is what I would like to do, but I could definitely see there being a significant increase in the number of cases that we have.
I think we probably need to understand from staff what you consider to be an easy case.
Right. I mean, to meet the criteria.
Well, and I guess that's a question we can ask here while we have the experts that can guide us on, you know, municipal government. What does it look like? Is it us establishing a set of criteria? Because that's what I have in my mind, and feel free to correct me, but my thoughts are, if we establish some criteria that says essentially what the proposed new language is going to say. If somebody comes in and says, I have a 3-bedroom house and they want 8 guests in that house, we say, well, 3 per each bedroom plus your additional 2, you meet that. If they can meet a minimum number of cars that doesn't require off-street that doesn't require on-street parking, then I would say that box can be checked. And just so on and so forth down the list. Where I get gray is when it comes back to notice, because if you can do that, notice is not required, that's one thing. But if notice is required, and then somebody, there has to be a process for a neighbor to say, hey, I take exception to this, well, then it needs to come off of that administrative approval to be heard as an individual case here.
Under our current process, if there is a conditional use, there's no public notice.
Okay.
You just have to meet the rules.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. To me, the staff approval process has largely been delegated to if it's a owner occupied, resident occupied. If it's resident occupied, staff, checks the verification, other details and says, okay, you're good because it's the primary residence. And then to many people's points, once you get to non-host occupied is where there's so many variables about the noise, about the parking, about the bedrooms, the bathrooms. I mean, we can look at it. It seems very difficult, but I think that's why we largely didn't go very far down that route, is because there's already, twice as many owner-occupied or primary host-occupied. There's already twice as many host-occupied home shares as there are non-host occupied. Does that make sense? Like that's still the bulk of home shares have the primary resident on the property.
Well, you guys would have to speak to the implications of what happens behind the scenes. I don't know how the sausage is made, but I definitely.
I think you're imagining an application where they have an application and neighbors have filed a revocation and they're asking for a variance to their renewal, all in the same property. I can actually imagine that happening.
Oh, well, and see, but, so to that point, those are the types of cases, I'm simply trying to make room for the cases that need the most attention, if it makes sense.
Yeah.
We do get a number of cases where there's no opposition, which would be the first thing that I would say. There's no opposition, and it's pretty straightforward, meaning that they're not asking for a number of guests that is outside of, the number of bedrooms that they can accommodate, the number of bedrooms that can accommodate those guests, and the parking seems sufficient. And we ask the same set of questions each time, and to my knowledge, as long as it's met, we've always approved it. So
It feels
we're doing it anyway.
administratively done.
We're already doing it. The only difference is we force them to wait in line and stay here to do that. But there's not been an instance where, outside of those standard set of questions that we ask, where they meet those that we don't approve.
Still has to get noticed, though, I think.
Yeah, I think
And then the other thing I was going to say is that if the public starts finding out about the process to revoke, we could be kind of inundated.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to do anything that you guys don't want to do. So,
I like the
we need to have
administrative
be on
idea.
the same page.
I think we all talked about that.
Is consent docket an option?
We've talked about consent docket in the past, and I think where we've landed has been each one needs its own individual vote, especially because they all have individual conditions. Does that sound accurate?
That's why we were kind of saying if they had the exact same conditions that met the criteria, then maybe we could do the
So we
consent
still
docket.
establish them, and staff can review and submit it as a staff report saying, hey, they meet your predetermined set of conditions, because consent docket items still get noticed, correct?
Right. Or can get pulled.
And exactly, and
pulled.
then can be pulled if someone shows up to protest.
But if they don't, they stay with the docket, and that's one you don't have to individually review, so.
So the problem can kind of solve itself in the sense that we don't have to try to spend so much time worrying about which ones fall in that box. It'll happen naturally, because if somebody says, hey, I'm here on one of these cases, then that one gets pulled. Or if we have something where there's some special considerations, it's not going to meet all those conditions anyway to be eligible for that consent docket.
We've thought about doing that just for renewals. Is that what you mean, or do you mean all new ones as well?
I'm for it on all of them. You guys weigh in on what you think.
Okay, as long as the public has an opportunity to be heard on it, and the applicant gets to speak at the same time. Everybody gets notice, nobody shows up, it's on the consent docket.
Okay, now I have a very specific question. All right, I know it appears that we, kind of gear our number of sleeping people based on the number of bedrooms, but then also bathrooms. And so if there are, I think I read somewhere in here where maybe it's in the proposed ordinance that we would have no more than 4 people per bathroom, okay? Even if there are multiple bedrooms. So think about the house on Northeast 39th Street, some of
One
those
bedroom?
older.
Or one
yeah,
bathroom?
One bathroom, but you've got multiple bedrooms.
Yeah.
So what's the rule of thumb as far as that is concerned? And is that something that's kind of been standardized by the board? And of course, I can ask that question since I'm still
You
a
are
newbie.
new, right. And it's not really standard. I mean, we do go to it, but sometimes we don't.
Yeah, and but to the point, I think this is a good discussion because one of the things that I think we all want is to be consistent. And so I'm perfectly okay with, especially if we're looking at a situation where these may end up on, at least being considered for a consent docket, that it would need to be the most conservative number. So the lesser of the occupancy that would be assigned based on the number of bathrooms or the number of bedrooms. So in a case where you got 3 bedrooms but only 1 bathroom, the maximum that you could get to be on the consent docket would be 4, even though you may have 3 bedrooms that would entitle you to 6.
And
or 8.
who's determining the number of bedrooms? I mean, an applicant can come up and tell us anything they want to tell us, and that was one of the reasons that, like, even when you look at the county and look up the property, it doesn't really tell you how many bathrooms. You can Zillow it, which I do. I know you think I'm crazy, but so sometimes I do, but.
No, we've done that. We had
sit
the
up here
one
and-
where we pulled up. The
Yeah.
bedrooms don't match what the city records show. So, it's a whole nother issue.
More for you to do, staff. Thank you.
Let me also just comment, I'm all for streamlining processes, and it seems as though we have an adequate balance between notice, given to the residents, especially if it's a non-owner occupied property. I mean, I think that's where we have to balance things. And as long as we can provide safeguards or feel comfortable for people who, I'm thinking about the situation where people have said, the person's already been running this as a party house, and now after complaints, they now then file, the appropriate.
Because they got caught, so now they're.
File for the appropriate licenses. As long as we don't let things like that fall through the cracks, then any way we can streamline or and be consistent on things, I'm all for that.
And that's a good point, is that I don't remember hearing anything that changed any of the consequences for operating without a license. And did I hear correctly? Is it $150 citation if you operate without a license?
Correct. Nothing about the penalty fees has changed.
Yeah.
The license fee just went up to $100.80.
Well, so I definitely want to make the recommendation, and I'm not trying to create more work, but I want it to be known that we need to have harsher guidelines for those that won't operate, because what ends up happening is it's not enough to disincentivize me if I'm not going to comply. There's nothing there to tell me to comply, and we've had some folks that have come here before this board, didn't get a favorable vote, and just through other organizations that I'm a part of have heard that they've just decided to do what they want to do anyway. Now, it's not my position to come and report or do anything at all like that, but I know that sentiment is there, that it's simply not costly enough for me to comply. So if I don't get what I want from Board of Adjustment, you guys can catch me, one, and then you fine me, but the fine is not enough to deter my behavior.
But what if it was? What if a person was convicted of operating without a home share license, then they couldn't apply? They would be ineligible for a year, 6 months,
Something.
whatever term, and then it wouldn't just be a citation. it
It
would
would be
be
penal.
a consequence
Yes.
for not
Yes.
having followed the rules.
No, I totally think we need something, even though it was 6 months. Just not, oh, I got caught last week, and so we're,
So now
well,
I
it takes 3
apply.
months, and so, I still operated the whole time, by the way, and I'm here to
But
get my
if you
new
get
application.
Caught, and you have to pay a fine, and you can't operate and make that money back.
Right.
Yeah, that's a great point, because the opposite exists right now. I'll get a fine, but me continuing to operate outside of compliance is more than enough to cover that fine. This is a cost of business at that point.
But that's in another office, right?
The, yes. But I think out of all this, I'm hearing that you would make a recommendation that staff research if and how a consent agenda could
Yes.
be constructed.
Yeah,
Yes.
that is what we're looking for.
And we can definitely do that.
So today, what are you looking from
Well, I was.
since we just muddied the water, and now we're in
Yeah.
the ADU?
Yeah, well,
Looking for you to just say, I accept it. I want to pass on, I want a motion to just recommend it as it exists.
Because of the,
Yes, yes, the simple thing would be just recommend it. I'm just kidding. But recommend it with various conditions. If you feel you need or want to continue it, for us to come back with you with more information, I'm happy to do that. It needs to be more, I need more than 2 weeks to do that, so.
no, it's good. I don't think the moratorium affects that many people, so I don't think continuing this for a month or whatever is a problem. I'd rather us approve a document that was more contained than us to try to approve a document and then add all of the questions to it.
I agree, and can we get a draft so that way we're not just throwing things at you up here? If we can get a draft and say, hey, Marilyn, this looks good, or I think it's good that everybody has such strong opinions about what it shows that there's a genuine care.
And this is also going to go to Planning Commission, so it's going to get even muddier. And talking to Sarah, it's like, we have to do it here, right? We can't have a study session, or?
We
Because of
can have, you can have a study session. It would be publicly noticed, which we can do. But yeah, we can hold your meeting in another venue, publicly notice it. That's what we do for the study sessions. They're technically public meetings. They just don't happen here.
I know it's extra work, but I'm a fan of it just because I think it goes a long way to show all of these residents who we've been trying to convince for a long time that we hear their voices. So having a meeting just to address all the things that they've said over the last couple of years and have them be a part of that process, I personally am a fan of.
After Planning Commission does their thing too, because I guarantee you it's going to be more muddy.
What's going to be more, that they're going to recommend more money?
More muddy, dirty.
muddy,
Just
oh.
so confusing, we're not going to know what to do after that. Just the way it feels. Kind of like the ADU ordinance. But my suggestion would be to defer it or continue it.
I agree.
Yeah. 2 more weeks, and no, you said
No,
that's
yeah,
not.
He wants a month,
exactly.
yeah. And maybe even to schedule a study session instead of just, even.
Yeah, a couple of things, and we'll call it a study session just to distinguish it. At the study session, staff would be coming back to you with some answers on the specific recommendations made here, one of which is consent docket. One was if we can limit guests 24/7. there was a brief discussion on if we could establish home sharing as a conditional use, but I think we kind of resolved that maybe in that a consent docket
Yeah.
might take care of that. Part of why I want to recap this is staff, planning, licensing, municipal counselor's office. You know, we've canvassed for the most part, the range of approaches. We've proofed it on what the city can legally do. We have gotten a very tenuous consensus with all of the groups we've met with on the extent to which this would satisfy their concerns. So I don't want the expectation to be that we're starting from zero. We're
Yeah.
starting from this point forward,
Yeah.
if that's okay.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Back to date to continue it. 1, 2, 3, 4. They have to set a date to continue it, correct? And they can't defer it.
Till planning commission muddies it.
Well, that's what, I imagine we couldn't be back here any sooner than 6 weeks,
Okay.
So that would be.
assuming we can get a meeting in
Those 6 weeks.
about 4 weeks.
October 3rd, then? Is that what you're looking at?
Yeah, that's what I was looking at. Yeah, October 3rd.
When does planning commission discuss this?
September 12, I think.
That's been extended also. I
Okay.
think it's on the 20, no, that's accessory dwellings. September 12th is the public hearing.
Okay.
Paid attention once.
Good memory. So October 3rd?
October 3rd.
Okay. I'm okay with that.
So make a motion to continue the recommendation on a proposed ordinance relating to zoning and planning code, amending chapter 59 of the Oklahoma City Municipal Code. Do I need to read the whole thing? Do I need to read it all?
You can reference items 1.
Oh,
Yeah, it's 2 items.
okay. Items, so recommend to continue items number 1 and number 2 of
I think those are
number
gonna
5.
be separate votes.
5-1, vote 5.
Okay. So, a motion to continue item 5, number 1.
Oh,
I have to do them separate.
second.
To October 3rd.
Okay. We got a motion and a second. Cast your votes.
My vote didn't get recorded, but I was a yes.
Okay.
And make a motion to continue item number 5, number 2 to October 3rd.
Second.
Motion and a second to continue. Cast your votes. Okay. I say adjourned.